All right, hey everyone, we're back with yet another Ursine Combo Lab audio episode. This one is the 24th one. We got a very special topic and set of guests here today to discuss a wonderfully relevant topic with the FGC recently. It's KOF's 30th anniversary. SNK has been celebrating the 30th anniversary of KOF over the past couple days. They've been posting some concept art on their Twitter to showcase the love that goes into this series. And to help share in that love, I've got a wonderful set of guests here today with me. So I'm Crucial Drive, and I'm joined here by Sano, EJK, Mothman, and StormClaymore to discuss the rich history of the series. Feel free to introduce yourselves, guys.
Hey guys, so this is Sano Ted Typhus. I'm a latecomer to SNK, but man, it's really been exciting to play these games. They're really great. We've been loving Garo in the Collegiate Broom Battle League. If I just give a micro introduction to the other guys, Akrushi, of course, is one of our experts, and also EJK, 11037, is our other expert today who know everything about KOF. And then we're also joined with our two-time CBBL champion Mothman's here, and StormClaymore, a KOF lover, is also joining us. Go ahead and introduce yourself, guys. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey guys, I'm Mothman. So I'm kind of coming more from like the Capcom side. Mostly play Street Fighter 6 these days, and in the past, Third Strike, all that good stuff. Versus games, Marvel, Tatsunoko. So I only really came to the KOF series with 15. Did a few trials in 13. Dabbled in 14 for like a couple weeks, but other than that, yeah, I was pretty much fresh on the latest game, so I kind of got converted from that side. And yeah, looking forward to what you guys have to share.
Good to have you.
Hi guys, so I'm EJK. I started KOF and SNK games in general with KOF 13. That was my introduction to the series after playing like Street Fighter 4. And I just fell in love with, SNK stuff in general, and so I've gone back and played a lot of the other games and, spent a lot of time learning about the game series, and yeah, I think it's great.
Excellent.
My name is StormClaymore. I was introduced to KOF many years ago. I remember my eldest cousin introduced me to King of Fighters. I think it was 2000 on an emulator known as Winkowox. I'm mostly someone who likes to play Tekken these days. I compete particularly in Tekken. KOF 15 was my introduction to the competitive aspect of the KOF series, but I have been playing KOF casually for many years of my life, and it's been a very wonderful opportunity to always talk about KOF with people who enjoy KOF as well. So it's good to have myself here to talk among other fans of KOF.
It sounds like everyone's giving their KOF origin story. How'd you get encouraged?
Oh boy. Interestingly, it was around the 09 era. I'd started with Street Fighter 4, right? As most people do from having gone into fighting games during that time period. KOF 13 was the other game that was on Xbox 360 available as a demo. So I tried that, naturally got pretty deep into it. That was around the time period I was diving deeper into fighting games in general, looking stuff on SRK, watching tournaments. And KOF 13 is a beautiful game, so naturally that caught my eye a lot. But what really got me deep into the series was playing a Flash Mugen version of KOF called KOF Wing. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that. That game I was playing a lot on school computers, and naturally I wanted to play the real games more deeply, so that's what really got me into it.
Excellent. All right, so this, for our 30th anniversary here, since there's so many, we thought we would actually go and talk about each one a little. So sorry for the hardcore people. We're not going to talk about like the Game Boy versions or Maximum Mayhem or Fatal Fury. Maybe we will in another episode if people are interested in that. But for now, we're going to stick to the main line. And of course, it's 2024, and 30 years ago, KOF 94 appeared on the scene. I guess EJK, can you start us with a little bit of rundown on what was unique about this entry? How is this one, this primordial KOF, different from the KOF people know?
Yeah, sure. So there's actually a lot of really interesting history here. This KOF 94, and I guess the KOF series by and large, is a sort of culmination of SNK's fighting games that are, more, how do you put it, that are not the weapon fighters, I should say. And so in this game, the title, in fact, is a reference to the King of Fighters tournament that is referenced in the original Fatal Fury and that series. And it's sort of a combination of the Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting cast. They put a lot of that cast in the games with, their respective teams, and introduced a lot of new characters. Like, the main character, Kyo, is a KOF original.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No wonder he's on the box art all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's really interesting because Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting are actually set in the same universe, but Art of Fighting in the universe is significantly earlier. Evidence of this is you have like a super young Geese who appears in, I believe it's Art of Fighting 2, and in the Fatal Fury series later on in Mark of the Wolves, you see Marco Rodriguez, or as he's localized as Butt, who is a Kyokugen successor to Ryo, who's become, the old mentor figure to him. And so KOF kind of was born out of a wanting of a like sort of want or desire to have a lot of their legacy characters and sort of conglomerate it under one umbrella. And to do this, it's set in its own sort of weird universe separate from that one, which is a little bit interesting. Things like Geese is Alive, for example, where, spoiler alert for a, what is it, like 30-plus-year-old game?
30-plus,
he dies in Fatal Fury universe. But
so the Fatal Fury was already like 4 games in, or if you count of Art of Fighting, like 7 or 8 games in at this point, right?
Yeah, it was. There's quite a lot of releases before this was, KOF was on the scene, and the series hadn't even finished by that point. They still were ongoing. Like you had Mark of the Wolves was released, I want to say like 99.
Yeah, 99.
And some of the other Art of Fighting games were also released later. I think Art of Fighting 3 was later, but I don't remember exactly what date. But it's just an interesting sort of thing because you have these connected universes that are already explicitly connected, and then they make a new one for timeline reasons, which I find extremely funny.
They were way ahead of Marvel.
Yeah. But from a gameplay perspective, it's quite interesting. It introduces a lot of, characters that are classic to KOF now. But from a gameplay perspective, it doesn't fully feel like a KOF in a lot of ways. It has step dash for forward dash, and there's no hopping. In fact, if you do a hop input in this game, it gives you a hyper jump, which is very weird. Also, a lot of the inputs are just like not what you expect them to be. Genocide Cutter is a backwards tiger knee, things like that. And DP motions are also just kind of hard to do in this game, quite honestly. Another thing about this one and 95, which we'll cover next, command normals are also not where you'd expect them to be. A lot of them, all the overheads are, for example, linked to heavy buttons, whereas if you play any game, that's actually played these days, they're always on light buttons usually.
I just wanted to note also, one thing that surprised me about this game was that you can't select characters.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's correct. There's no edit team, yeah. You just have to pick a team and go.
I believe.
Do you like that, Karushi?
Yeah, I was gonna say I believe Team Edit was added in 95. Honestly, that's like 95's only notable new feature. We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
Spoiler alert.
We'll get to that in a second, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to expand upon what EJ mentioned about the gameplay wise 94. Oh my goodness, it lacks such polish. I think they were trying to find an identity for this game, and it had not yet been found because it was the first of its kind for SNK at least. having a crossover within their own IP. And given that all these characters come from like 2 games or so, it's hard to translate their individual characteristics into one coherent fighting game where it makes sense. And as such, like some of like the strength of certain characters, seeing Mai able to like zone out Heavy D pretty powerfully,
You
right?
can't roll.
Yeah, you can't roll. They didn't have those mechanics in 94 at the time. So a
You
lot
can
of
do a lagless dodge though.
Yeah, it's like a Grand Blue dodge.
yeah, the spot dodge, I don't know. It's not that great, but it's there, I guess. It exists. It's not like Smash or anything. You're not going to be using it to call out certain neutral options. And for that matter, I think neutral is a little shallow in this game. There, a lot of the buttons had reach you would like expect them to have based on the button strength, based on the spacing you sat from. But given how wide the screen was compared to something like Street Fighter at the time, you couldn't really like use your normals as a crutch. You had to really get in, and that's like impossible to do almost against characters with a projectile. So overall, just the game was in its infancy stage regarding polish, regarding identity, and I think what especially didn't help things was the way the super system worked. I don't recall all the details.
Yeah, that sucked.
Yeah, I don't recall the details of how it worked, but it's not.
You can charge, but you lose it. Every character, you lose all your meter when they die.
Mhm.
Yeah. Like you had to like charge your meter up, and that was a feature that carried over later on as well until like they added it back in. I believe for 98 is one of the modes.
EJK is it whenever you see PAL, that's when you can charge. Can you charge in 96?
Yeah, 97 and 98 have it as the EX mode, yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's this whole charging gimmick is, going back to it's based on sort of the bones of 2 other games. I think it's kind of reminiscent and roughly based off of the like Art of Fighting Spirit Gauge, kind of. But I guess the difference is with the Spirit Gauge, you use it for any special and you start the match with full.
Mm-hmm.
Let's kick it to our observers here, Mothman and StormClaymore. I assume you've never played this game. What do you think of the fixed team mechanic there, where you can't choose your characters? Would that be a deal breaker for you if that had remained the entire time?
I actually played this game. Like I played. Just to preface this, I played all the KOF games. Like on like a Neo Geo emulator.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that, rolling back from like, 98 and just discovering like, 94 exists. I wonder what that's like. And then to realize that, I can't choose other teams. It's interesting that, it's interesting that this was like, their first decision. And then they realized that, hey, maybe we should give our, fans the opportunity to, to change characters to their own desires. But, given that, like, I personally don't think this as a, as someone who's trying to appreciate the game, I don't think this as a, deal breaker. I think this is a way to just, like, I don't know, adapt to, like, what the game offers.
Because it is something unique about 94.
Yeah, precisely. Like, it's a game that was a product of its generation. And I was already, budding new to this new format. So, like if it's, I mean, some of us like a theme, like if I have to play Team Korea, by all means, Team America, Team Japan, yeah, they're there for a reason. But I guess that having the choice to choose, I guess if you're competitive, I guess it outweighs that instead of like having a theme. So
I could definitely see how you'd basically see the same matchups a lot, right? Because you're always going to have kind of the same characters in. But Mothman, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is adding some context for me as to why characters in KOF 15 were kind of introduced on teams. Like, oh, cool, like they're from the same lore or whatever. But then after that, I didn't really think about it because I didn't play these older games in the series. But it's also reminding me like this sometimes happens when people learn about or try playing like Marvel vs. Capcom. They're like, oh, like it's called Marvel vs. Capcom, so I thought I had to pick like 3 on the same side or whatever. So I guess this is like an instance of that to see how it actually works. For me, it's not a deal breaker, but I do wonder, being not familiar with the game, like I wonder if they designed each team in mind where like, okay, they're supposed to have 3 different styles that kind of like cover each other, or if they did it another way where, okay, if you like grapplers, you pick this team. If you like whatever Shoto-esque types, you like this team.
It's definitely an interesting way to auto balance like groups of people, right? You can make one person really strong and 2 really weak to balance it or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is interesting to see for sure. I've never seen a game that has like preset teams like this.
Yeah, I don't think any other tag fighter does that.
Oh, how cool it would have been if they'd actually like taken that into account for designing these teams. They definitely did not.
They didn't.
They definitely did not.
They didn't.
Balance didn't exist in 1994.
Yeah,
No.
and as you can see on screen, the Ikari team is the most broken team in the game. I didn't pilot them very well, but they Ralph and Clark both have infinites, I believe, and Hydran is also pretty good. So yeah, they're a little busted.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a while before you see a balanced game. Maybe.
Team Japan, I think, is the second best, and they're just all around solid. They're, Hyo and Benimaru are usually pretty good, and Daimon in these older games especially is he's strong.
Okay, I'll just make a last comment on this, then you guys can leave any more comments you like. I do think that even though like it's so old and it does some funky things, KOF is here, right? It's got the teams, it's got the orders, it's got like cool little touches, like you can see your beat up teammates hanging out in the background there. I think that's really funny. It just like they actually did like very well in one go, and I think they knew they had something special, and that's why they started making one every year.
Yeah, it laid the groundwork, which is most important for any series that wants to have longevity. You don't have to always get it right the first time, but if you improve every subsequent entry, then that's how you get some fans that'll stick around. I want to comment on the stages because this is going to be a recurring theme, especially for the 90s and early 2000s games. Stages in this game look incredible. A lot of the stages are not recurring in the series. They usually change it up every game, which takes quite a bit of work. I think people don't appreciate that much nowadays because it's not something you really pay attention to. But when they're good in KOF, like they really stand out, and we'll get to that like for the future games too.
All right, so let's keep it rolling. So we had a limited cast in 94, and in 95 we expand things a little bit, and we get a fan favorite. Can you believe Iori wasn't in the first KOF? Almost hard to believe. Another thing that I'm just going to point out while we're looking at the box art, you have to go really far into KOF to get Terry on the cover. Really far.
No. Go back up.
He might be a little character on the cover somewhere, but...
Wait, go back up. No, go to the last slide. Hold on.
Oh, there he is. Okay, but he's one of 6, right? I'm talking about this Kyo stunting on the front here style. So, all right, we got him early, but after that, it takes quite a while. So, what's up with 95, guys? What did they bring in 95?
Yeah, I'll let AJK take this to begin. I just want to say this is the game that Sakurai mentions. Yeah.
It's 94. It expanded the cast a little.
Well, if you're looking at the footage now, you can see you get team edit. I think that's pretty big.
That is true.
And you can choose not to team edit also. They're like, some people aren't going to want to have to take the mental effort to mix and match.
Yeah.
I feel like the team edit option of not having, if you select no, is probably just so that you could have, like, if you're doing like an arcade run and you want the lore, because everyone knows the one thing you need in fighting games is lore. You pick that, I think. Maybe that's the
Mothman, did you go back and read the Wikipedia to get all the lore?
That's first order of business with any fighting game.
StormClaymore, you spent 9 hours with the lore, I assume. Yeah, okay, that's fine. We'll assume
no,
yes.
like
They always talk about playing with heart. Where else are you supposed to get heart from if not the Wikipedia lore?
No, I'm quite familiar with some of the lore in, like the Orochi Saga, Nests, and but like I guess not in 95. So
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I guess from a lore perspective, there's not too much going on in 94 and 95 besides Rugal's evil, and he's holding a tournament. And then he brainwashes Kyo's dad.
Oh yeah, because Kyo's dad is in 95, right? That's one of the new characters. And that's a character we don't get in 15, actually, so...
Mm-hmm. He only appears in, like, 95 and 98 as a playable character, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's in much else. But to what, to the new characters in this game, yeah, of course, Iori is Iori, right? Like, you're going to be... anyone who knows KOF, you know Iori. And it's the starting trends that I'll point out later, but it's an interesting trend of whenever they introduce a, like, hero or, like, a main character, so to speak, they always tend to introduce their rival, not in the same game, but in the game after.
So you're saying Ryo appears and then Iori appears?
Yeah. Kyo is in 94, and then Iori appears in 95, and I'll point out some of the other ones in later games, but here Iori is, as Iori as ever, pretty much. If you know how to play Iori in any other game, he plays pretty much the same. The one little thing that's different about this game compared to a lot of other games is with Iori and stuff like that. Well, no hop still, so that kind of sucks. But also, you can't do there are very few command normals, and you can't cancel command normals from normals, so you don't really get his classic, close C forward A combo. But he does have Taco, but like 94, a lot of the buttons are weird, and so it's actually back D, and it's not, it doesn't flip when you jump over your opponent, so you have to do it manually.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Karusha, you have any thoughts on 95 here? I mean, they give us the boss character right away. That's kind of cool. You can play as him.
Yeah, it is worth pointing out, like, we already talked about team edit. I do think you guys are underselling how important that was added. I actually took notes on this a couple years back, but this is one of the most, like, lauded features that 95 introduced. Well, to be fair, 95 didn't really introduce much, so what else could you really talk about, right? But this was pretty important, and because of the fan reception of this feature, that's why they kept bringing it back in. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't too much like extra development time or whatever to keep adding it in or whatever, but still, the fact that they kept it in means that they saw that, like, people appreciated having this in the game and made it a note to retain it in future entries. Another thing I do want to mention, Team USA, nowhere to be found in 95. Team USA comprised of Heavy D, Lucky, and Brian. This team was replaced by Iori's team, for that matter. So it's kind of sad that, we lost Heavy D. A lot of people like that character, and I do think Brian's pretty cool gameplay wise, but given that they made room for one of the most iconic characters in KOF now, I think it was well worth the replacement. Apart from that, I mean, yeah, I don't really have much to talk about 95 gameplay wise. It's literally the same as 94. So it's like that's definitely one knock against it. Like, they didn't really change that much except for the roster and the team edit feature. And then of course the story advanced forward, but that's about it.
I mean, you gotta, like, I could see that they took however long it took to make KF 94, and then they're like, oh, we're gonna make another one.
Yeah.
So you'd have only the year or maybe even months that they decide to make another one to make that one.
Yeah, pretty much. And one thing is that, yeah, they'll adjust the balance, they'll adjust the moveset slightly, but in this game, I don't think they were really keen on, like, completely overhauling a character's moveset at this point in time. That is something they would do later in later KOF games. So let's keep that at the front of our minds. But at this point,
these are pretty standard.
Yeah.
Mothman, they introduced Iori in this one. Was that a good decision?
Is that a what?
Good decision.
I don't know. He's cool. I've always been on board. Someone who's less enlightened. I feel like he fits a certain niche that players are often attracted to.
The top tier variety.
Yeah, the character that has everything, but also he's edgy and has Shadow the Hedgehog energy.
His design lands almost fully formed. He's got the untuck here already. He's already like the Iori we know. A lot of the other designs in 95 are still a little primordial. They're not quite like Rio's not as buff as he's going to get eventually. Athena, they changed like almost every game. She looks weird in almost every game.
Yeah, they change her outfit every game. That's, yeah.
She's actually a callback. I forgot to mention this in 94, but she's also a character that's not from KOF. She's from Psycho Soldier, which is not even a fighting game. It's just a like platformer, I think, or something like that. It's historically notable for being, or maybe I forget exactly what it was, but it's historically notable for being the first game with like a song that has words.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it is a shoot 'em up. I always forget what it is because I've never actually played it.
They definitely also hit with Rugal. He's a very cool boss. StormClaymore, in your emulator runs, did you ever beat Rugal?
It took a while. I'm not gonna lie. A lot of the KOF boss. There's a reason why they call it the SNK boss
syndrome.
You know.
Yeah,
like it takes Rugal eats your inputs. Actually, speaking of rivals, I would also like to add a little tidbit. If you notice Iori's team, you'll realize that each member represents rivalries towards one of the main characters, I guess opponents. Kyo is with Iori. Then you also have Terry with Billy Kane, and then you have Ryo with Eiji. Eiji is known for his anti-Kyogen Ryu antics, so there's that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good call out. Yeah, I never even thought about it that way. That's really interesting. Also, if you notice on the screen, that whole thing was just trying to do Genocide Cutter.
Thank you, JK.
That's why if the gameplay looked a little weird, Sayana was trying to do the
backward
Genocide
TK,
Cutter,
yeah.
but it was a backwards TK, which is a weird input. Another thing about Team Rifle that I think is really funny is we talked about how they replace Team USA. There's some lore there. The lore is they basically beat up Team USA, American sports team, and just took their invitations. And it becomes a running gag in the series where oftentimes when a new team is introduced, the lore behind them is they beat up the American sports team and took their invitations. So canonically speaking, the American sports teams is oftentimes invited back. They just tend not to make it back.
Wow.
And most of the games.
NA trash and everything. Well, US, I guess, in this case, but
I mean, let's be real. Like the US sports team represent one of the mainline games of the sports game that Neo Geo has released. Basketball, football, and that sorts.
Mhm.
It's not very likewise. It's not very likely that footballer will beat up someone who has mastered their dojo's fighting style. So give or take that.
yeah, fair
All
enough.
right. Any last comments on 95 before we move on?
Seems like
Okay.
we're good. Mm-hmm.
Let's clip into 96 here. So 96 came 1 year later, and there's really nothing distinguishing for me to introduce.
Hello, Leona. Excuse you.
Oh, well, okay, all right. She's right there on the front. There is Leona. Well, how do you, Mothman, Leona, good decision or bad decision bringing this character in? If Mothman's still there. We'll get back to him later.
Again?
Was Leona a good addition or a bad addition?
I think she's cool too. I don't know. Again, I feel like everyone's a good addition. I've always been on board with like most of the KOF designs, and I feel like they're all different enough. One thing that I like is that they don't seem to be scared of just giving everyone a lot of good tools. I feel like in other games it's sometimes like more limited or more like along the lines of your archetype. But KOF just feels really diverse because obviously you can have characters with like Fireball, DP, Command Grab all in one. So more the merrier.
Oh yeah, command grabs
That's
especially.
excellent.
Yeah,
I think we also get Vice and Mature this time. Isn't that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We also get Kasumi, who is in Art of Fighting 3, I believe. Chizuru makes her first appearance, as does Genitz. Chizuru is the sub-boss of this game, and Genitz is the final boss. They're both, as you'll see later in the gameplay section, very busted.
Yeah, I think Chizuru was a bad call.
Yeah,
That character is very annoying in 15.
it's
And
also
as you can see on the left side of the screen, the boss team, they're not the actual final bosses of the game. They're just called that because they're, historical bosses of KOF, or SNK fighting games, is also introduced in KOF for the first time.
in EGK. Why is Chizuru in this game? You did mention that she's now in the game. There is a story reason why she's in the game.
Yeah, she's the third member of kind of this trio that you have between Kyo, Iori, and Chizuru. They represent 3 different clans, and that represent the three sacred treasures, which are the Kusanagi sword, the the Yasukan ni Magatama, I believe, and the Yata mirror.
That's crazy. That's the Emperor's treasures, and they're KOFs about that. That's funny.
Yeah. Other interesting things that happen in this game are Kyo gets a complete moveset overhaul. With regards to his special moves besides his up kicks and his DP. This is where Rekka Kyo comes from.
Mm-hmm.
And also from a gameplay perspective, this is the first game that starts to feel like KOF, I would say. You get running and you get hopping, which is big.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, it still maintains that POW meter with the charge, but movement starts to develop. Oh, and you get rolls, of course.
Yeah.
Do you think, StormClaymore, do you think there's any place for this sort of charge meta in modern fighters? Like if they added a POW character in 15?
Charging wise, it's not viable. That's what I believe, because it requires you to like hold still and gain as much energy when you could be naturally gaining meter by just engaging in the fight. I think like this is it. It's a very outdated game mechanic that is going to be superseded by meter building through like stocks. So yeah, I always felt it was awkward for them to charge and then slowly lose that once you reach the maximum and expect
it goes away
burst
too.
out. I would also like to add the reason, lore-wise, the reason why Kyo is now Rekka is because Gonitz beat his ass. So he has to rethink everything just to get his run back with Gonitz.
Very true.
Yeah, this moveset of Kyo's, I think, became like more favored among the fans than the previous movesets. And for whatever reason, it got later known as Nest style Kyo, even though it was not introduced in the Nest era. I think it's because of KOF 13, unfortunately, where that's the name they gave the DLC character, Rekka Kyo.
It's a weird story, but we can cover that later.
Yeah,
I've got things to say about that.
Yeah, for sure. I'm getting ahead of myself. Gameplay wise, though, it's super important that they changed it to this gameplay that we now know and love today as KOF. It's set and established all the KOF isms that like were kept in place pretty much from this game onward. As EGK mentioned, the running, the rolls called emergency evasion, and the modes of jumps, that's a big thing. That changes entirely how you think of characters' normals and how you play neutral. And unfortunately, that didn't really translate very well with the existing characters' movesets. And as such, I think people complained about unbalance. Basically, the previous characters that were from like 95 and 4, some of them had a great transition in 96, some of them did not. And the newer characters didn't have quite the polish for this sort of game context that some other characters did. So overall, it's a little bit of a mess. But for the first of its kind with this new gameplay being adapted, I think they did a good job, or a decent job at least. I do want to mention one more thing about the super meter. Before, like in 94 and 5, super meter would, as the other guys mentioned, charge by like, you have to manually charge it, or you would have to take damage or block. In this game, you can build meter with the traditional means, or as you'd, at least somewhat as you'd expect. But you can also use supers by having flashing red health, which I believe that's not unique to this game. I think that was available in previous games. But basically, you don't need to have like a full POW meter to be able to use supers. If you did have both full POW meter and flashing red health, then you can get like a more powerful super desperation move. So
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So they were starting to think about it a little.
A little would be correct.
If I can post, go ahead. You got a thought?
Yeah, I had one trivia bit. Funny enough, Whip, which is now one of my favorite characters, and I'm sure Mothman loves Whip as well. Whip was supposed to be introduced in 96 on the Ikari team, but because Leona was introduced, they decided to delay Whip until a game that we'll get to shortly. So, unfortunately, Whip got kicked out of there.
Funny. They were planning, I guess, when you make the game so similar like 94, 95, and 96 are, you can just be like, we'll put them out next year.
Yep, exactly.
Do you think that was just kind of like a time crunch thing, or like were they too similar for the roster?
I think they wanted to introduce like one female Ikari Warriors character at a time. So they're like, okay, it's you, Leona, or it's you, Whip. And they decided Leona. And it worked out because Hydern was not in the game. Well, Hydern was in the game, but I think it worked out because it allowed for Leona's introduction into the game to be like more highlighted. So like people compare, oh, Leona's like got this, but Hydern's not got this, right? So that might have been part of it, but I think they were just also doing the classic like iPhone thing where you plan like 3 years out the next iPhone,
Yeah, makes sense.
So, yeah.
So if I can ask StormClaymore and Mothman here, and I guess EJK and Karushi, among the first 3 game bosses, and let's include Geese, why not? Who's the coolest bad guy? You can use the KOF 15 versions, but we got Go Nuts, Gernitz, Geese, Rugal, and Rugal's brother, what's his name?
Are we talking about Wolfgang Krauser?
Yes, Krauser.
Geese's brother.
Oh, he's Geese's brother. Oh, because he looks like the other guy's brother.
That's understandable, yeah. And I mean, heck, Rugal even steals his Kaiser wave.
Yeah, sheesh. Anyone can make that mistake then.
I'm a big fan of Gunitz.
Coolest boss. Yeah, I gotta give it to Genitz here. That's Genitz or Geese, but Genitz is pretty darn cool, I gotta say.
If the KOF version of Rugal was better, then I might have given it to him. But I'm going Geese.
Ah, the Rashomon, yes.
I feel like for me, I would have to go Rugal. I don't know. It's just something so iconic. He seems very like imposing. I think also like CVS2 is having an impact on me saying that. But I don't know, dude. Another uncultured moment for me. But when they added Gonitz to KOF 15, I was like, that's just some guy. But seeing the new older game context, I see the vision. But yeah, I'd probably pick Rugal.
Yeah,
it's huge.
I it's a tie between Rugal and Geese because of their the way they present themselves. Like I can't root for Gonitz because this is a guy who goes like Coco Deska and throws like a tornado in the middle of the the stage. I'm just like, that's not my boss character. That's too much. But with Rugal, at least you have a fighting chance as long as he doesn't read your buttons. But like Geese, okay, maybe it's Geese because for one thing, he came to Tekken 7, which was pretty cool. But also that he's actually a cool character when it comes to viability in a game. Like, he used like a mixture of Aikido. He's like a actual Japanese weeaboo, American weeaboo. And there's something about him saying like predictable or terrible. It's so it has like his guttural evoke that I like to vibe with versus like someone saying genocide tata. It's something I don't know. It just feels cool. Not Coco Deska. What the hell is that?
I don't know if you can get much cooler than Genocidal Cutter. That might be the coolest move in KOF. I don't know.
He almost seems like a Tekken character.
Oh, no. And he was great at it. Any last comments for 97 here?
I have a
96,
few, I guess.
before we move to 97.
So
96.
one, from a lore perspective, I think it's interesting because you're starting to more flesh out the lore a little bit, because with 94 and 95, the boss was both Rugal and then Omega Rugal in 95. And so it's just kind of, there wasn't too much there, but here you're starting to flesh it out a little more because you introduce Genitz, and it starts to introduce this mystery of the Orochi, which we'll get into in the next game, really, more so. But it's an interesting starting point for the lore, I would say. Another thing I want to also mention is, like Kurushi said, this is a landmark game for KOF gameplay, but I also want to point out it's also a landmark game for the KOF soundtrack. KOF soundtracks are, almost are like known for being really good, and SNK in general, but 96 in particular was one of the ones that really solidified a lot of characters' themes. Horatio Saxophone 2 by Iori is like what most people consider his sort of definitive theme, and it gets remixed so much. And same thing with Kyo's version of Asaka in this game versus, he had one in 94 and Funky Asaka in 95, but the one everyone knows is the 96 version. Same thing with Fairy or Trash Head, all very, very great tracks, and it really just sort of was the game that, for soundtrack purposes, is like, for a lot of people, I think, really top notch.
100%.
All right, if there's no more comments, let's go ahead and the years keep rushing by. We're to the fourth game now. The King of Fighters 97.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Yeah, this game was a sensation in East Asia, especially China. For good reason. If I may, I'd like to get into it. Oh my goodness.
Please.
So, yeah, this game, they didn't want to mess with what they had struck gameplay-wise on for 96. So they brought back 96's gameplay, newly introduced gameplay mechanics in the form of advanced mode, while retaining some of the older style gameplay in extra mode. So extra mode is basically 94, 95 gameplay with the sidestep, the charge meter. Sidestep, of course, being the spot dodge. And advanced had the rolling, the standard meter building that we know of today, at least. And then the different modes of jumps. It's worth noting that they also had max mode for this game. I believe this was the first KOF game with max mode. Correct me if I'm wrong, EJK.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could argue in some regard that once you charge the meter, you went into a sort of max mode. But this is the one, this is the first one with like proper max mode, yeah.
Yeah, like where you like just pop it, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so max mode, if you used a desperation move or like, super during it didn't end max mode as far as I understand. But to activate max mode, it cost 1 stock. So you can see how that can get kind of grimy. A lot of characters would, abuse max mode in a way to like put you in weird risk reward situations. So that's like the gameplay side of it. Unfortunately, yet again, we're still in the year 97, so naturally there's going to be some impolish. Some characters at infinites. Terry had a laughably easy one.
Power charge.
Yeah.
Power charge.
It's very, very famous, and that
Bring it back for SF6.
Yeah, I don't know if we want to bring it
no.
back. Well, given what happened in China with that, we might not want that back because there's a lot of stories about people getting stabbed after that infinite.
God.
Yeah, you would infinite people with Terry, and then that stuff would happen. A lot of those stories are from 97. So that's interesting. In this game, so EJK mentioned already that Kyo had his newly received moveset in 96 with the Rekkas. Fans hated it, actually. I'm not among those fans that hated it, but obviously I wasn't playing KOF in 96. So anyway, they SNK, knowing that KOF is for the fans, heard what they said and made sure to bring in 2 versions of Kyo in 97. I believe the second version was alternate and you had to like select it in a special way. I don't remember the way to select
there's
it.
a Kyo 2.
Yeah, pretty much there's a Kyo
Not
2.
how it was selected in this game. I know in 98, you hold the like start button or the like, that button to select the alternate versions.
Yeah.
I'm not sure in this game, actually.
Yeah, I can't remember either, to be honest. It's been too long.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they did have 2 versions of Kyo. And trust me, this did set like the stage for this to be done in future iterations. Like they started doing this in the Nest era games. They started doing this in 98, of course. And then we know the rest of the games they did from there, like 13 and 15. So yeah, this game. Otherwise, I don't know if there's anything really else to say about it. Gameplay wise, it's cool, but it's a little bit broken and unbalanced still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Like, I think one of the major things about this game is the super meter. But one thing that is interesting that you might not be used to if you're, familiar with, newer KOFs is the fact that meter doesn't actually give you, it doesn't give you like an extra, how do you put it? Like you don't get like 4 meters when you lose. You don't get a higher maximum amount of meter as you might see from the gameplay. When you lose, you're just still stuck at, 3 max meter, which is interesting. And meter transfer in this game also works really weird. In modern KOF, you gain a bar every time you lose a character, basically, right? But in this old game, in most old games, you don't. But in this game, they have the system where basically, like, what your team has, like, how do you put it? Depending on what characters you pick, if they have good affinity, they'll give you extra meter, or they'll take away meter, or they'll do nothing. So most characters, if you have one, let's say character A and character B back to back, most of the time it'll be neutral and you won't get anything back, but you won't take away anything. But if you have like Kyo and Iori on the same team, they hate each other, right? So you'll get actually minus a bar, which is really funny.
That's crazy.
And it's not randomized in this game. Another thing to mention is the plot and the lore. As you can see, that's Team New Faces, or I was playing earlier Team New Faces, but here they're the Orochi team. They were introduced in this game, and they were also in the story introduced later as the sub-bosses in their true Orochi awakened forms. And this is where, and they become fan favorite characters, really, in a lot of ways. But you flesh out the Orochi lore also because other sub-bosses are Orochi, Leona, and Iori, who basically, like, how do you put it? I don't know how to describe it very well, but they fall under the, like, control of the Orochi blood because their lineages are cursed. And also you have Yamazaki, who is also revealed to be part of Orochi, but the lore literally is he's too psychotic that the ride of blood does not affect him. And he's just he doesn't get mind controlled because he's just insane. which is funny. He's also makes his first KOF appearance, as I believe Blue Mary does as well. And Shingo is a newly introduced character who is a basically fanboy of Kyo and copies his moves.
Mm-hmm.
And he never really gets out of that role. He's in this kind of Sakura place for the next, 13, 12 KOFs.
Yeah, pretty much. The other thing is, spoiler alert for, again, a really old game, but the Orochi team, as I mentioned, they're introduced in this game, but they also die in this game and sacrifice themselves to the Orochi god, and Chris becomes a body for Orochi, and then Orochi is defeated in this game. And that's disappointing to a lot of people, I think, because, they're really fan-favorite characters, and a lot of people really liked them. So, yeah.
That's funny. What do you think about... I think this is a StormClaymore and MOTHMAN. This is an issue that is very present in modern games, too. When people die, should they leave the series?
It's interesting because there are games which are, dictated by lore, which makes it, like KOF has a advantage because they allow the dream matches to replay your dead characters in a way. But because games are dictated by not just by lore but also by popularity, it feels weird just killing off very popular characters and just not bringing them back. I mean, it's a very divisive topic depending on who you talk to. I, for one, I'm just listen, if the devs want to make a story and kill off the characters, fine. I don't have an issue with it, but I do understand why it's a very controversial move to remove characters simply because the story demands it. So,
Yeah, for me, I care mostly about the gameplay side. So I think lore-wise, it's all good. I'm down to have people brought back or whatever dream matches. That's fine. I feel like the lore aspect kind of goes out the window as soon as you see a mirror match. You're like, oh, okay,
that's true.
Two literally of the same character. So why not someone who's long gone or whatever? I think my personal frustration, and maybe some people share this, is just that we've been waiting to see what happens next in the Street Fighter story for so long, and Third Strike for the longest time was this far off in the future, okay, that's when things are going to happen. Finally, SF6 is the first one set after that, and then they just bring Bison back instead of any Third Strike character or Gil or another new character or anything. So I think that's kind of where that kind of frustration is coming from. But in general, I really don't think it's a problem at all.
That makes sense. And KOF seems pretty good with moving their story along.
Mm-hmm. I think Mothman brought up a really good point. Another interesting thing about this sort of whole thing about bringing back characters from lore perspective and things like that is, there's you can have a separation sort of gameplay and story to a degree because, like you said, with mirror matches, clearly that can't be canon. And so an example from SNK is in Fatal Fury, there are a couple Fatal Fury games after Geese dies that have Geese in it, but he's not canon. He's just Nightmare Geese, which is basically just, what it is, a nightmare version of him. So they basically put him in the game without him being, tied to any sort of lore mess. Another thing I would like to mention is, as you saw from the last game, Chris's jump CD is introduced in this game. So,
Jump CDs.
Oh, no.
Chris jump CD is definitely, it is a move.
Not even the best version of it yet.
No, it is not. But it's the move of KOF players' nightmares.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any last thoughts about 97 here before we move to the first KOF that people actually play on 5K?
I guess it's the canonical end of the Orochi saga. And so one thing worth noting in terms of, we were talking about with 95, team edit, right? This one actually does have a specific team in it, which what we alluded to with 96 and Chizuru's introduction. If you pick Iori, Kyo, and Chizuru as your team, you get the special sort of like primary canonical ending to this game, which is where they defeat Orochi.
Oh, nice.
And seal him like forever, in quotations.
I would also like to add that if you have Kyo and Shingo on your team, you get a little special ending where Shingo finally gets acknowledged by Kyo, saying like, "Hey, congratulations! Here's your consolation prize, my gloves," and then it just starts his new journey of being part of the Kusanagi clan training. So
Yes.
No, and that's the last time anyone respects him.
Oh, it's not. No, it's not the last. It's not the last. There's another game.
All right, let's keep moving forward into the future here. So now we're on the, let's see, 5th game, the very popular KOF 98.
The GOAT.
The GOAT. Look at the style and class on the Neo Geo cover here. Holy moly. 1 to 2 players, because this is so stylish you can play it by yourself. All right, what's going in 98? Why is 98 the one that everyone plays for these old KOFs?
There's 2 main reasons: the roster and the gameplay. The roster is the best up to this point. It's a dream match game. This is how they would be called from here on. Whenever there's like a non-story game where SNK just decides to bring back every dead character into the game. So 90
and Team America Sports.
Yes, they're back. Like, they're no longer snubbed. Yeah, Dream Match games historically are the most popular games in the KOF series. This is the first of the Dream Match games in the KOF series. So, that being said, very popular, right? But there's more to it than that. This game brought back the mechanics that 97 had in more polished form. It had Advanced and Extra. And it had, I think it had the same super meter system. There is one change, though. I do believe your deeper characters can stock more meter in this game, and that was not in 97. So that, again, just helped support the polish of this game so much, because it allowed for you to actually consider running a certain character in Anchor, or like running them in like Point, for example, right? Like, this was an actual like meta consideration rather than just I'm putting them there because that's my best character, because before you wouldn't really care about that. Also, this game removed a lot of the infinites that were present in 97. In fact, I think it removed all of them that were in 97 at least. There are still like a couple of touch of death combos in this game because damage is still pretty high. But this game has proper damage scaling, thankfully, for the most part. So you usually won't get like touch of death unless your opponent's expending resources. I already mentioned the roster being good. There's also a much easier way of selecting alternate characters. And I think they're referred to as EX characters in the game's manual or something. I'm not sure. But
yeah, I believe they're EXs in English, but I think in Japanese they're the Uda characters, which means like alternate.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I think something like that.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, there were a lot of them. I can't name them all off the top of my head. I'll pull up the SRK page.
I think there was EX Kyo. The Fatal Fury team I think had EXs, and I think the Art of Fighting team had EXs, and the Orochi team did. I think cool. That's it. But I could be missing some. There's Omega Rugal, I guess, too. But no, he's not in this game. Oh no, I'm tripping. Ignore me. That's UM.
No, you're all good. Yeah, okay. I just pulled up the SRK page. So there was EX Kyo, EX Terry, EX Andy, EX Joe, EX Rio, EX Robert, EX Yuri, EX Billy Kane, EX Mai, and the Orochi characters. So that would be Yashiro, Shermie, and Chris.
They all play a little different.
Oh, a little differently is an understatement. They play very differently. Well, most of them do. I would say for sure Kyo, Yuri, and then the Orochi characters certainly do. I'm not so sure about the other ones. I didn't mess around with the other ones as much personally, but Kyo is literally like Rekka versus not Rekka, so that's a big deal. And then the Orochi characters, like Orochi Shermie is a character that can like set projectiles on the screen rather than being like more grapple oriented. Orochi Chris has like purple fire attacks and he has a really well balanced moveset as opposed to regular Chris, who's more like oriented towards getting in. And then Orochi Yashiro is like more grapples, but can still like beat up your opponent compared to regular Yashiro, who's only like just beating up your opponent, you know, that kind of thing. It's hard to describe their moveset succinctly because there's so many differences. One thing also to point out here, so obviously the stages are all different. I think this game has the best stages out of the ones we talked about so far. This game's stages are super iconic. The boat stage that goes along the river, like that stage is burned into my mind for playing 98. I played 98 so much when I was younger. It's just amazing to look at, and usually your characters are there in the background as well as with the previous KOF games. So when they're like cheering you on, or like, you know, they get like sulking and disappointed at your loss, like you can really feel immersed in playing the game. It's awesome. Soundtrack's great as usual. I think that's all I had to mention without like taking too much time up. There's so much to talk about this game because
This game is
awesome.
the big one.
Yeah.
It does
This game is
feel
so
like
great.
it feels like KOF has kind of arrived in this form. Like this is mostly KOF.
Mhm.
It also feels kind of like, is there any reason to play the first 4 games? I mean, maybe Mothman or StormClaymore can speak to, was there anything that would tempt you to go back to 94, 95, 96, 97? Or would it does it look like you should just stop here?
I mean, scouring 94 to 97 is only for like, I guess if you're learning how to make fighting games, and if you're a fan of SNK, you just look at the development process and the feel and mechanics, because you know that like if you have a good game, you got to compare with your older games, like what did they do to improve this game and why, and there's always some appreciation towards it. But if you're gonna play like whatever the Orochi Saga has, 98 is you know the go-to. So
I think that's a good point. Is KOF is kind of a living legend, a living document of game design.
Yep.
Because they made so many, and all of them, you know, always kind of hewed to a certain format, and they tend to have the same characters over and over again. So it is interesting to look at it that way.
Yeah, I love it too because this was back in a time period where SNK were really not afraid to experiment. I mean, they still weren't afraid to experiment after this game, of course, but they truly did try to add something special to each individual entry. After all, they're making these games yearly, and you have to have a way of selling it to the arcade operators, which we failed to mention it up to this point. But part of the reason why KOF popped off so much in international scenes is the MVS is very cheap to operate. You can have up to 6 cartridges at the same time, in like you know, of games available to play. And KOF was pumping out games year after year, so naturally fans drew an affinity for it, and arcade operators saw that, you know, it makes the money, right? So might as well keep it to keep your arcade afloat. So this is part of what gave KOF some lasting power, and then 98 came around with all the fan favorites, with all the excellent gameplay, and it really goes to show that if SNK just, you know, focused primarily on that thing and, you know, didn't have a story to worry about, this is the quality that they could put out. And yeah, I do want to mention like one thing, I guess, just like a random thing. Extra mode is a little bit bad, like at least in terms of if you're thinking about like competitively, it's not that great, but specifically for Kyo, it's really strong because jump down C, instant overhead off of dash, it's crazy, and you can combo off of it really easily. Not to mention like confirms into Orochinagi were really potent, so just having the meter dump available easily with extra mode because you can charge your meter, that proved to be
Not
very
only that,
powerful.
but the dash down C is an infinite.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. So
Tight, it's tight, but it is an infinite.
yeah, and so, you know, there is that component, Like, you can mess around with the modes and you can find that combination that works perfectly for the respective character. But most characters honestly were better on advanced.
Yeah.
That was just the more polished gameplay mechanic to work with.
The one other character you could maybe make an argument for maybe using an extra, I wouldn't recommend it, but you could, is Kim, because you don't build the meter when you hit them, and you can do then stomp cancels. Which, look on the screen now. Here's the stomp cancel.
Oh yeah, it doesn't input overlap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't have meter to do super. But I still would recommend advanced with Kim still, but
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what you're talking about with the EX characters, interestingly, I think for both the Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting characters, there was a shift in their movesets. I think it was was it KOF 96 that changed them into what's considered their standard movesets in this game. And for some of the characters, still is considered their standard KOF moveset, like Ryo. But that's not true with Terry. Which is to say, because KOF is kind of with hops, it's a more aggressive game than like Fatal Fury or Art of Fighting. They created these new movesets to be more geared towards close combat, kind of in a similar vein to what they did with Kyo, with replacing his fireball with a Rekka.
Yeah.
Where you see, this is where Ryo, the KOF version of Ryo is the version of Ryo that, has that close range, big fireball as opposed to, throwing the fireball like you did in Art of Fighting. And so the EX characters are oftentimes sort of more fireball-based versions of the characters, so to speak. All the Art of Fighting team has really short-range projectiles that in this game, even Robert, who nowadays historically has, the standard fireball, he has sort of a Ryo-styled fireball in this game. But you pick the EX versions of any of them, and they get their old, Art of Fighting fireballs back. And the same thing with the Fatal Fury team.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting that with the Dream Match thing, you can play kind of like the old and new versions. Mothman and StormClaymore, what do you think about keeping like old versions of a character in a game? Like nowadays you have a patch and you sort of like delete the year one version and it's just gone. Like you literally can't play the JP that has a good amnesia anymore.
Nah.
Not that anyone's mad about that, but he is gone. JP players are mad, I guess. What do you guys think about keeping old JP in with a code somehow?
I think it'd be cool. It's almost kind of been done before, right? With like Street Fighter 4 version select, and they even had the experimental like Omega mode and all of that.
True.
I think my biggest concern would just be like from a gameplay perspective, either you have to have it so that like all the allowed characters are on the same version, or you have to like regulate that somehow. I don't know if something would be too broken or whatever, but there's also been times in the past where there is a version select and the old version actually ends up being way better, even though they lack a mechanic. So like in Super Turbo, right? Old Sagat, like his frame data on fireballs, etc., is way better. He has several other advantages. So even though they made Super Turbo with the new Super Gauge mechanics and cast and everything, the old thing was still one of the most dominant things in the game. So I think it could be interesting. And also just from like a time capsule and like fan perspective too, right? Like we can go back and revisit these things.
Yeah, maybe you could make it so you could turn it on or off in Street Fighter 6, for instance, if you did something like that.
Right.
Mothman brought up a really interesting thing, which was like Street Fighter 4 Omega. I think that's what the like EX characters are a little bit more akin to than balance patched versions, because it's kind of like you have the same, normals usually and general sort of movement and stuff, but then you switch the specials kind of thing,
Yeah.
And also it's rumored, I don't know if this was ever confirmed, but that was supposed to be like the prototype for a lot of characters and moves in SF5.
Yeah. You've got Ryu with the
interesting,
parry and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like an interesting like foreshadowing or like little lab experiment.
Yeah, and this is like a very slippery slope type of situation, especially now that we're seeing like unrelated like Dragon Ball Fighters going to the most that kind of route, and then there are some like just when you, like revisiting back the old games, and you're just like stuck with this current patch that brings a lot of bad memories. That especially if you love this main very much, but sometimes questionable developer patches come in, and you play the character, and you're like, why did they remove this specific element from this particular character? And then it becomes disgusting. Yeah, that's right, Harada. I hate you for messing up season 4 Double Gen Times 7. But other than that, like what Ultra Street Fighter 4 did was ahead of its time, and I don't think they'll be doing it ever again, because that is such a great idea.
Well, if Ultra Street Fighter 4 was ahead of its time, then KOF 98 was way ahead of its time.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
SNK always is. Let's make that clear. I should also.
Well, you know what they say: the future is here.
You might even say now. Yeah. 98 also had like a number of ROM hacks and bootlegs.
Oh god! Oh boy! Yeah.
My favorite one is I think it's called like 98 Crazy Combo. I can't remember the abbreviation for it, but the juggles get really insane. Like they basically gave like anywhere juggle properties to a lot of moves to allow for like a lot of the lower tier characters to actually have something worth playing them for in competitive play. And I think it's a cool revision done by fans. It doesn't really hold up to the charm of the original game, but the fact that those things existed means it did have a passionate fan base, 98, and goes to show the power of cultural influence that this game had for its time. And also SNK remade this game basically twice. 98 Ultimate Match and 98 Ultimate Match Final Edition. A number of ports for it. I don't know if those two versions hold up to the original, to be honest. The gameplay changes are... I mean, the balance changes are fair. Like, they did nerf the best tools, such as Orochi's jump CD... Or, I said Orochi. Chris's jump CD. But I don't know if the additional mode that they added was really something good to add to the game. Because
EX and Ultimate mode, yeah. Oh god.
Yeah. Like Advanced and Extra is perfectly fine, and then they decided to add a third one, and it ruined things. Truthfully, and Final Edition, I don't think anyone has like patch notes for that because it's really hard to track down every individual change. But from what I can recall, the changes were very minimal to Ultimate
Dream
Match.
Cancel has some of them. I think most of them listed, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
I did. Before we move on from 98, I did want to ask EJK to explain one thing. There is a weird thing about 98. It has RNG.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Go back to the character select here. So, if you remember what I was saying about 97, where the meter transfer is kind of dependent on character relationships, and also, what also ties into this is if they help you or not, if you're getting like pummeled by like a mash throw type of thing. Here, if you on the order select, if you hold start, you'll see these little faces. Now these faces are entirely RNG based on the day. If you're on the same day, like if you play this game, once and then you come back to it on the same day, it'll be the same. But every single day, based on the like Neo Geo's clock, from what I understand, randomizes these relations depending on your team. And so here you can see there's a neutral face, a smiley face, and a frowny face, or an angry red face, right? The neutral face means if you lose with that character, whatever your current meter is, it stays the same. The frowny face means it deletes a meter, and the happy face means it adds a meter. I should clarify like an actual stock of meter, not like the maximum match you can have. That always goes up if you lose a character. And so this kind of can sometimes play into your strategy if you walk into the arcade one day and today your character relationships are all wacky. You might have to restructure your team if you want to have a lot more meter going into the next round. But by and large, from what I've seen from competitive play, people don't usually tend to change their order around too much. Like Orochi Chris is almost always still an anchor character, even if the meter transfers are bad. But it's a little interesting note that it is actually genuinely RNG dependent. From what I have seen in competitive, if they play on emulator, they tend to reset the game to re-randomize these values every set, but not every game. Generally, one set is entirely played out on one set of randomizations.
So weird.
Yeah.
It's a very strange thing. Also, another thing about competitive in this game that you might not be used to if you play newer KOFs. In this game and some of the older games, guard cancels are strong.
Mm-hmm.
They do a chunk of damage.
Super important usage of meter. Like,
Yeah.
the meta in 98 was definitely like, if you've got your opponent back to corner, but you're blocking, spend that meter on guard canceling, put the back in the corner. Guard cancel roll is a bit riskier, generally speaking, because it's easy to punish, as it has continued to be in future games. But yeah, good pointing that out. I forgot to mention guard canceling.
Yeah, guard cancel blowback is like, if you have no life left, but your opponent has like 3 meters, you're... This game is so much harder to, make a comeback like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one more thing before we move on. There is a glitch in this game, and I think everyone knows what it is. Leona and Chang salute each other.
Well, Chang doesn't do anything. Chang picks his nose, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But Leona salutes him. Hey, no, it's not a glitch. No. The developers said it themselves. This is she respects strength or something.
Game recognized.
She also like what do you call it? She like insults Ralph or something. The theory is they switched something in the code accidentally, but in newer games this glitch is referenced, and it is a host of fan art / whatever you want to say.
Okay, it's time to leave the comfortable waters of 98 and go into the weird, wild waters of 99. We start to get some Doraki Tenshi influence here. We get K and all these guys. What's going on with 99? What's happening?
Oh
Why
dear.
is this happening?
Well, it's the foray into the new era. It's the Nest era. We lost Kyo and Iori, bruh.
Wow.
Or did we? Nah, they are secret characters, so they're not gone from the game. But I mean, it's like, come on now. Like, why did they do it like this, right?
If I recall, kind of a similar situation to like Street Fighter 3, where they didn't want the main characters in the game anymore, but then at last kind of minute they were like, wait, no, we need them.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, it's cool. I guess 99. I think it's being like the first game in the new era. SNK really wanted it to be set apart from what they had done in the past, even in the previous year. So you can see the visuals are completely different style. The stages are textured like quite tremendously. I would say it's like they did a good job with the stages in this game. I prefer 2000 stages, but if I had to give some positive comments on 99, it would be the stages for sure. Gameplay wise, I don't know if I can say the same. It's experimental. I appreciate what they were going for. Strikers are awesome. It's not very polished whatsoever.
So the strikers are they're assists basically in KOF. So we almost had Marvel versus SNK Mothman. They were building towards it when they got to the 2000s.
Yeah, it's super jank. Some of the strikers legit like just don't function. Like they do things when you press the button, obviously, or press the combination of buttons, but they don't really function in a way that makes it worth picking. Whereas other strikers are just like, why would I ever pick anything else? And it continued to be like this actually in 2000 and 2001. I think 2000 handles strikers the best, but we'll get to that in a second. The cast. The cast is cool. I think the new characters.
Let me just pose a question to everyone.
Yeah, sure.
So, KOF has decided not to go this way, but they flirted with it many times. Would you be interested in seeing like a KOF 16 with live tag and assists? Do you ever want to see that? Because other games figured it out, right? I feel like when they're experimenting here, they kind of don't know how to do it. But other games did eventually figure it out. We know what a tag game looks like. Would you ever want to see a tag game KOF?
Oh, you're about to find out in the later editions of KOF.
Well, it doesn't. You never get tag and assist in the same game.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting. I will say,
Personally, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I will say that in the future, like we will be mentioning this in the games next, but sometimes I feel like there is a stale moment where you have to wait for like 3 characters to pass by, even though the game itself can pass by really fast depending on the skill level and how much the opponent will steamroll the opponent. But having like a tag mechanic does also like make things interesting. So you don't have to just sit down and wait for like, great, here's another character. I gotta cycle through the characters. Like, nope, here's my character. Eat it.
Personally, I do think that's like a valuable thing, and I think tag is like quite an interesting thing. But for me personally, it's not for me. It's I do not like tag or assists. Tag especially to sort of the counterpoint of that and the antithesis of that is, to me, I feel like when I lose a character, I want 3 seconds to just sort of think about it. You know what I mean? Like, what can I do with this next character to beat my opponent? Being thrown back in immediately is a little bit uncomfortable, but that's just, I don't play any tag games, so that's just sort of like a personal thing.
No, that's a good point. Like having that little tiny breathing room.
Yeah, and it's not, I don't think tag is good or bad, like objectively or anything, but it's just not something that I'm, a particular fan of, I guess.
They're not known for their neutral, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends who you
MOTHMAN?
ask. No, I'm
Oh
just
yeah.
kidding.
Come on in. What do you think? You want to see it?
As a huge tag game enjoyer, yeah, of course, I would love to see something like that. But there's like some questions in my mind how they would make it work. I'd be interested to see that if it ever happened. But I feel like one thing is like the movement, right? It usually comes with some air dashes or quick high-low type of thing. Whereas like I know KOF is very fast-paced and has mix-ups and stuff, but I don't know how it would translate over exactly. But yeah, another thing is I'm just not sure like the tag mechanic itself. Like personally, I don't know if this goes for everyone, but personally, I'm just not as much of a fan of active tag as like a hard tag, just because it always devolves into like, okay, do some multi-hit plus move that combos on hit and is plus on block, and then tag and do another mix-up, which like I think is kind of like reductive a little bit. But anyway, my personal grievance aside, I think a hard tag would just be more interesting because it's like you would have to either spend resources somehow to switch out or just take the risk of tagging out.
So you don't like Z tag or whatever, or when you can tag mid combo.
Like mid combo is cool. Like yeah, aerial exchange or like TAC or whatever. I do like that. But I mean when it's more like you can tag mid move. You can put a projectile on the screen and then tag, or you can do a block string and tag while the block string's still going. I just feel like that is a little more like flowcharty, I guess, than like having to manually tag your characters through a mechanic or just hard tag.
I see. Well, in 99's case, it was all assists, and in fact, you choose a 4th character that's assist only. So we had something a little bit unique here. Is there anything, EJK, Karushi, you guys want to add more about this game?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Whip.
Yep. Whip is now in the game. Whip in this game is she's okay. I mean,
it took this long,
right? But she is a Ness character. Well, I mean, forcibly so. She could have been introduced earlier, but anyway.
Conspiracy. They added this whole the whole of Strikers was added specifically so they can get an excuse to add Whip in a game. No room on the Akari team. We gotta have a 4th team member.
Yeah,
that's the only reason it exists, guys. Trust.
Yeah. Regarding the Strikers, Cyan already mentioned you choose a 4th character. Interestingly, you start with I believe 3 striker stocks. Basically, this is like the number of striker assists you can call. and they don't restock unless you lose a character. Some of the strikers are absolutely horrendous. Some of them are really, really good, and again, invalidate pretty much every other character strikes at least. Kenso, I think, is the one that like gives you some health back. Debatably useful, but it's a matter of opportunity cost after all. Will you get hit enough where that will matter? Who knows? The other thing about strikers is that you could usually press them like without needing to specifically be in a neutral situation, like meaning like you're not pressing any buttons. But the way the game registers striker input is a little weird because of the combination you need to initiate it. Yeah, so that's regarding strikers. I did want to mention one other thing because this game had another like kind of under discussed mechanic. Counter mode. Yeah, counter and armor mode. It's a little goofball. But counter mode.
Oh gosh.
So basically, counter mode gives you like I think 25% more damage, and then both give you more like pushback for your attacks. So like if you're doing a block string, the opponent will get pushed away a little more. But one thing that counter mode is distinguished from armor mode is that it'll give you access to super cancels, which means like you can do a special move into a super. It sounds like you should be able to do that already, but that was unfortunately only available while you're in counter mode. Okay, and then that lasted, I think, for 20 seconds versus armor mode, which lasts for only 10 seconds, but allows for all of your attacks to get auto guard. It's so dumb. It's just better. It's just better than counter mode, straight up.
Not only that, but I think both of them also increase hit stun on some. Is it light normals only, or is it both?
I'm not sure about
I
that
know
one.
they allow more hit stun on something because I've seen some really weird combo videos with them where it's like pseudo infinites.
I see. That's not surprising, but I will say like armor mode is on average better for most characters. Some characters are really good in counter mode just because when you cash out, like you get a lot of benefit from it, like Jun especially because of the way his special moves work. Jin was newly introduced. He's like the Taekwondo fighter, but works a lot differently than Kim. I think some other characters though might be good in counter mode, but I can't remember. 99's like just like kind of intermediary, honestly. Like it's an introduction to the Ness era, but gameplay wise, it's not quite there.
Yeah, and I think what is interesting is with the four like member team format, they added a lot of like new characters or shifted around a lot of characters in sort of an interesting way. The new characters, yeah, as you mentioned, there's Jun. There's, I think Bao is completely new, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And then I think Shangfei and is from Fatal Fury, one of the Fatal Fury games, I believe.
I believe it's Fatal Fury 3. Oh.
That sounds right. Yeah, I something like that. Yeah. And so they make all of those characters are like new to KOF, which is kind of cool. And then they also shift around a lot of teams. Like the classic woman fighters team is kind of split up. Mai joins the Fatal Fury team, and Yuri joins the Art of Fighting team, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some just interesting sort of team shifting because of how the four-member team system works.
Yeah, this game also had a Kyo 1, Kyo 2, the clones. But we don't talk about those, honestly.
Oops, all Kyo!
Yeah, I mean, Kyo 1 is kind of a Fireball Kyo, kind of, and then Kyo 2 is kind of a Orochi Saga Rekka Kyo, kind of.
Yeah, not really. I don't know why
they
they
have
did
their
this.
own set of quirks, but canonically they are literally just an army of clones.
Yeah.
And yeah.
They really wanted to hide the fact that Kyo and Yuri weren't in the base roster. That you had to get them through secret means.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, I think that was it.
All right, have we covered 99? We'll see the evolution of this then. When we move into 2000, we get fan favorite Kula, and what else did we get, guys?
Vanessa, let's go.
Ramon, Lin, Seth, and Hinako, I think. I think they're new, right? Are there anyone else?
Vanessa. Yeah, I don't remember anyone else.
Yeah, I guess we'll see on the
was
character select.
Hinako the last KOF 15 character added?
Yes, much to my dismay, until the Vice and Mature announcement, and now I'm
Right, yeah.
But it's a personal grievance.
Let's touch base with Mothman now. Have you enjoyed Hinako's edition at all? Because she came from 2000.
Yeah, honestly, it was a bit after my time. I haven't been playing too much since she came out, but I did get to play against one player at my local who was using her. And just going in blind, she was a totally different character than I thought she was going to be based on the look, you know?
Yeah, interesting design. Very slow, very heavy.
Yeah. Okay. 2000. It's a direct sequel to 99 in every way. They polished things up, including the counter mode, armor mode. They give them a few new things. I think this is the game EJK that gave the hit stun increase.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, maybe I was thinking of this one.
Yeah. There's a lot more things that they changed to armor mode. Honestly, I don't remember everything. There's a lot. Trust me. They legit added like bullet points of new things to both armor and counter mode. Strikers are a lot better in this game, for better or for worse. Seth is, I think, the de facto best striker in the game. He's a combo extender for every character, pretty much. As a solo character, meaning like as playing him like regularly, he's not amazing. But he's cool, but he's not good gameplay wise. On the other hand, Vanessa, this being her first game, I think the devs put a lot of love into her moveset. It's really flashy. Everything
she looks really cool in this game.
Yeah, everything just goes into everything like really well. I think this was one of the few times where they like designed a new character that was oriented towards like, hey, we want things to cancel into each other. We want to let the player create combos without like having to go through hoops and hurdles or having to think about, oh, this is a link or this is a really tight command normal cancel. A lot of her moves have like 2 hits or like multi-hit, so it just allows for confirming to be really easy.
They also needed a boxer after the deletion of Heavy D.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah. So apart from that, stages in 2000, I think slight step down from 99. I think 99 had great stages, but again, like 99, that was like the best thing going for it probably, apart from the music. 2000, great music, polishing up the mechanics a little bit. The new cast additions, I don't really have much to comment on most of them, apart from who I just mentioned, Vanessa. Was Lin newly added in this game, or was he in
I think so.
Yeah, he's new.
Okay.
I don't think he was in 99.
Yeah, I think Lin is cool, but unfortunately he's not a popular character, so naturally he's not going to really get any attention compared to like, we're getting slight like static from your side, I think, Sayano. I think Lin was not really like very popular among fans, so unfortunately that went under a lot of people's radars. Meanwhile, King's moveset was being changed quite a bit. I'm not sure if that's really something we should harp on though. A lot of characters' movesets were being changed quite a bit. But one thing for sure is that Kyo and Yor were back in the base roster. SNK realized their mistake. Why not just put them in the base roster? Why go through the trouble of making them secret unlockable characters? So yeah, they fixed that one.
And let's be honest, Lin is pretty much just setting the groundwork for Duolan, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, naturally you need to have like a basis for some new characters that you might think of adding later. Such was the case for the Kyo Rekka version, because you know that set the stage for Kyo 1, Kyo 2, etc. What else? There's one thing I was gonna. Oh yeah. So taunts. Taunts in this game recovered your striker, recovered like 1 striker gauge.
Yeah.
But you couldn't cancel the taunt. But it actually was worth using the taunt as Oki sometimes, especially for how good the strikers were in this game. Like Seth.
If you had Seth or Joe.
Yeah, like that was worth it. Like you remembered your taunt button for that kind of thing. That's what I'm saying, pretty much. I don't even remember what taunt did in 99. Like that's how kind of significant that change was. Yeah.
I think this game also lets you switch up your team if you won, which was cool.
You mean like order select?
Oh yeah, when you want,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh
You can
yeah.
choose new characters with your quarter.
If your opponent comes back in, yeah, you can change.
Mm-mm. Probably a more notable feature for MVS, but I'm sure you guys took note of it since you were playing on the emulator.
Indeed.
Yeah. But yeah, here another thing that's like interesting is like with strikers being so powerful, you actually see a lot more usage of them in the meta, and so this is where they become quite dangerous. And also with strikers though, instead of before where you just pick a character and that's your striker, you can pick one of 3 different versions of the character, or if you pick a character and set them as the striker, you can pick one of 3 different things, which are just the normal character. And then there's an alternate thing which you can scroll to. I think if you saw earlier that you can scroll through like Vice and Mature if you pick Iori as your striker. But then I forget the secret code, but there's a secret way to get a third secret sort of option. And what's interesting about the strikers in this game is those alternate options, a lot of them are either like references to something or characters that aren't in KOF or, all sorts of weird stuff. Ones I can think of are like all the Orochi team is an alternate striker set for the Akari team, and like the Kim brothers are striker alternates for Chang and Choi, I believe. And so you get a lot of like interesting callbacks and stuff like that, which are clearly not canon. Also Kaede is Ryo striker alternate. So you've got some really like kind of cool callbacks, and this is one of the things SNK I think does really well is this fan service and putting little nods to their other works in every game they make.
Yeah, they had really great attention to detail for this time period. A lot of things that they did were with purpose, and any fan that noticed them was rewarded pretty much. Yeah, this game, like, it's really cool. I think it's like the better. It came out quite well for how experimental it still was, and it's a much more polished version of 99, but it's still super broken. I mean, the stuff you could do with strikers in this game is a little silly, especially with picking armor mode. Like, armor mode is also just a little crazy in this game. But
I do think this is the hidden gem of these weird tag fighters, though. I think this is the best one.
Agreed. Yeah, fully agree. Like 2000 is the one I go back to if I'm looking for this specific striker gameplay.
Yeah, I also really like 2000 in a lot of ways. I think I'm also partially biased because 2000 has maybe this, I don't know if this is a hot take, it might have my favorite, if not at least top 3 KOF soundtracks, period. Go listen to the arranged ones if you haven't. They're really good in my opinion. It has my favorite Iori theme and maybe my favorite Kyo theme too. Like, they made some good tracks.
Yeah,
SNK has made a ton of great music over the years. I mean, they've pushed out so much, and then they get to keep iterating on these themes. StormClaymore and Mothman. How important is good music to your enjoyment of fighting games?
Good music, it means everything. Like, it's not just, grooving while you're playing the game. It's about how you carry on in your daily life and bringing that with you. Like sometimes, let's say I need to listen to something that is empowering, like KOF, like Kyo's Goodbye Asaka arranged theme. It feels good. There's a story to it. There's like a slow rise and then a climax and it goes down. Or if I want to feel something so jazzy, or like Iori's theme from '97, which is, I believe, is like the best one out of the entire themes of it. And having that, like, even years later, like when you're doing something that's not particularly related to fighting games, you can always bring that with you because they are a core element of who you are and what your identity is. because it feels good. There's nothing else I can say it, because it's like KOF music is just so good that I might as well listen to it every now and then.
Nice, definitely.
Yeah, I have a bit of a weird take on this, but any game that I play a lot, I turn the music off completely. But that's not to say that, there aren't a lot of great fighting game OSTs and stuff that I love and are very nostalgic. So I think it's a huge point. I think it's a huge selling point for like selling the atmosphere, like the feel of the game. I think that's super important. But yeah, when I'm gonna like grind a lot, I don't know, it gets a little too much. And I feel like some of the like most recent OSTs from like modern games haven't been hitting as hard, so it's not that bad to like miss out once in a while.
When you put the headphones on in a top 8 though, and you hear the music, are you like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, no, good point. That was the other thing, is that like it adds a certain element of like intensity. Yeah, like if you're in a bracket or just
Oh.
like mood, right? Like if you're playing something in like an arcade somewhere, I feel like it sets the vibe better then. But just like purely grinding, I'll turn it off.
mean, that's reasonable though. I personally haven't been a fan of uh modern fighting game soundtracks either. Like even 15, like I'm like, okay, I like 14's better, but yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah, and it depends on the series, of course. But I know people have different opinions. But yeah.
Hmm.
I guess one other thing about this entry, and 99 to a degree, this is the twilight era of classic SNK. This is a really important sort of era because post KOF 98, SNK, SNK made it big with 98 and stuff, but then they started losing, they started becoming a lot more financially unstable, and it's reflected in 99 and 2000. Not necessarily in the quality of the game, but in more subtle ways. In the soundtrack, especially, like with Kyo, his theme in 99 is Tears, which is a reflection of sort of this almost melancholy attitude or like feeling of sadness, I guess. And in 2000, Goodbye Osaka is his theme, and it's really symbolic. A lot of people like to call it Goodbye SNK because they knew this was their final KOF game.
Oh, they knew?
Classic SNK. And I think that's also part of the reason they put so much work into the strikers and the stages and everything in this game. They wanted to at least go out with, a bang.
Yeah, and as we transition to the next game, that's where we're going to talk about that.
I would like to add that with the striker systems, like you can select like strikers that are, you don't have to choose from the core members. You can also choose from representative of other games, such as games from their main line. For example, like you can choose Last Blade, you can choose from Baruki 1, even like KOF 97, Samurai Showdown, and even original characters that never made the cut based off of like initial designs. Like for example, Kyo Kusanagi, his striker is a guy named Seo Kirishima, who was initially supposed to be the Kyo, but he got scrapped. So they threw him in as a bonus, a reference as a striker. So yeah, there was a lot of love and homages to their mainline games in their striker system.
Yeah, 2000 was definitely a cool game. This was definitely a good goodbye to SNK. I'm glad they came back, but before they came back, we got whatever this is.
Oh dear, yeah.
Oh god.
Well, I guess I should have mentioned in 2000 also, this is feeding into my conspiracy. Kula was introduced in this game, who is K-Dash's rival, and K-Dash was introduced in 99. She was introduced a game later.
True, there they are. But now they're in 2001.
Yeah. What is
Look
this
at this
monstrosity?
Oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, this monstrosity of a game. So SNK likes change it up every game, right? This was not an SNK game. This is actually an Eolith game. I think it was Eolith, Sun, some other companies I don't remember, but Eolith is the one I remember mainly. Anyway, this is not really an SNK game. SNK do have the rights to this game, thankfully, but that was after this game like went through all its stuff. Gameplay wise, what a mess. Oh my goodness. For some reason, it was decided that this game needed an overhaul to the striker system that worked really well, I think, in 2000. So as you can see on the current screen, you select your team of 4, and then you select how many strikers you want. You can have up to 3 strikers, unlike in 2000 where you could have only 1. But if you have 3 strikers, you have only 1 character to fight with. Theoretically, right? Theoretically. In actuality, you do get like kind of benefits and downsides to playing with 1 character and 3 strikers, but honestly, like, do we even want to get into that much detail? Like, the stuff is just so complicated, and it's just a mess.
And it's not fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even know this until I played it with Cyano the other time, but when you pick, like, if you pick, like, no strikers, you only have a max meter of 1. You can only ever store 1 meter.
Yeah. That
It's weird.
I don't know. I guess, it's cool. This game exists in its own, like, molds. And it's nice to come back to just from a historical perspective. That's what I appreciate a lot about just each KOF game being so distinct. However, from just like a, I guess, polish and technical standpoint, it's a bit of a mess. And the one positive thing I have to say about the game is the roster. The roster is pretty cool. It's just that it's the roster in a really awful game, right? Like that ends up not really working out too well. But introduced, I believe, Foxy, Melee, who else?
Angel,
that's a big one.
and well, it
K49,
also didn't.
yeah.
It did not introduce that character. No, doesn't exist. No.
yeah.
That's illegal.
Yeah,
I'm kidding.
That's funny. Yeah, Angel became a fan favorite for pretty obvious reasons. But even like that aside, like gameplay wise, she's really cool. Very unique.
And also, one of the most interesting things about Angel is she's actually like she has some weird, like real life lore. She was created because I forget what the company was, but it was some. I think it was a Mexican game dev team. They when they visited SNK or something, they challenged the SNK employees to a KOF match, and they won. So they, as a sort of reward, they were able to come up with a character that SNK would then put in their game, and Angel is a result of that, which is really cool.
Yes, so cool.
Yeah, that's a super awesome tidbit there, and of course, Angel became a very big fan favorite character in Mexico and Latin American regions. My personal favorite, or one of my personal favorites, Melee, was introduced in this game. Although,
yes.
It wasn't until 2002 where she became really fun to play. Unfortunately, like again, this game had a great roster, but really just awkward and awful gameplay. I don't even think the stages were that great, to be honest. Again, it wasn't SNK, so all these things we're talking about are come to no surprise, really. Like they tried their best. The companies that stood in, they tried their best with what they could work with, but at the end of the day, 2001 sits really weirdly as an intermediary between the next game, which we're going to talk about soon, and the previous game, which I think did things quite well, to be honest.
I think, since this is the SNK Appreciation Day, we don't need to spend too much time on 01, right? Is there anything else anyone wants to say about 01?
Soundtrack god awful.
Yeah.
It's like
This was our Capcom fighting jam.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah.
I will praise so many SNK soundtracks. This is I guess you could say it's not SNK, but this one's bad. This one's real bad.
Agree. Foxy's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. She is neat.
Actually, one thing I really like about Melee is that she is a homage to Tokusatsu, like Kamen
Yes.
Rider and Power Ranger. Oh my god, her moveset change mid-game is the coolest shit
It's so
ever.
sick. It's so sick. Yeah.
Henshin as his final attack. Oh my god, that is so sick.
Yeah, she's a real neat character.
Yeah, I think
All
that's
right.
it though.
So since we actually found a positive point, let's end here for 01.
Yeah.
We'll move on to 02, the champion of Latin America.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
This game was a phenomenon. It's actually just insane. Like they still play this game to this day. it's unbelievable. Another dream match game. What do you know? The dream match games yet again being the standouts in the series. Brought back all the characters from Nest era. Not every character from every single KOF game, unfortunately. That'll be for another game we'll talk about soon. But they brought back all the Nest characters into a game where they sought to change change things again gameplay wise. Got rid of the striker system. Honestly, thank the Lord. And they brought in max mode. Oh my goodness, max mode is crazy in this game. So it doesn't work like 98's or 97's max mode. Basically, you pop it. I think you need to have 1 bar for it. It depends on the conditions though. 1 bar if you use it in neutral, 2 bars if you cancel into it. And then it allows you to cancel specials into specials using something called a free cancel. And the sky's the limit for that. Crazy combos, a lot of TODs. Some characters are literal top tiers, like Angel is, because she has an infinite. Although I don't know if her infinite necessitates max mode. I can't remember anymore.
I don't think it does.
Yeah. I know Vanessa's TOD requires max mode to at least like make full use of it. But regardless, this game is really, really cool to go back to. Like gameplay is honestly, I wouldn't even call the gameplay polished. I would just call it fun. It's just fun. Like it's just plain and simple. It's clean. Max mode is there if you wouldn't really take the combos to the limit, and there's a lot to experiment with it. But to be honest, it's just a pure and clean KOF game. Like max mode being literally the only gimmick in this game works out quite well for it. I think it's what a lot of people would have asked for. The roster's great. Soundtrack's back to be okay. O2's soundtrack wasn't that good, to be honest. I think people kind of misremember. Yeah, it's not amazing. But
then half of them are just older tracks reused, which is cheating, kinda.
Yeah. I mean, it's still like can't be understated how influential this game was in Mexico and South America, though. Like,
absolutely,
it was very cheap for them to operate this game at arcades, and thus like it became a staple pretty much instantly.
Not only that, but there were a whole host of like knockoff versions of it that were everywhere.
Yeah, 100%.
Which helped. It might have hurt SNK's profits in the short term, but in the long run, it made lifelong fans, I think.
Yep. And also, I think this was the first game developed under the Claymore moniker. This later would become like SNK again, I guess. I don't know, like SNK Claymore, but yeah, it was still Eolith involved in the development of this game. But it's not something that people really think about too much because the gameplay is, again, it's pure, it's simple, does its job quite well. I think just removing the striker system, honestly, kind of showed like KOF is just a good gameplay foundation, and you don't really need to add gimmicks necessarily.
Yeah, that's the funny thing about this one is they're like, whatever we were working on for the last 2 years, gone.
Yep. Yeah. But it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Like, again, it's a broken game still. Honestly, it's not very polished, but it's a ton of fun.
I'll go to the gallery here. Both StormClaymore and Mothman. If you've been looking at the footage, like, can you see the evolution, like in the design sensibilities, or does this still look like 94 to you?
Oh, you jest. It is a huge jump from whatever 94 was.
Mm-hmm.
Improved animations, improved, graphic graphics, improved pretty much everything. I mean, yeah, there were some minor setbacks due to the financial status of like SNK, which was understandable because they're a company that gives too much love, but it costs them too much money, and for them to just come back from like that kind of status is always going to be in welcoming arms.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, what were you going to say? I was done with.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot to mention this. Anyway, they added like a new set of supers. It's like a hidden thing. I don't know. Max 2 is what people call them. If you had a certain amount of health, like I think it's like 30% or lower or something, and you had 3 bars, you get the HSDM, the hidden super desperation move. And it did a lot of damage, but I mean, it's not even something that really comes up gameplay wise, but it's cool for like the fans to see like what supers they ended up adding to the game.
It gives Kill a frame 1 command grab.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Did they add
Also-
any new characters in this one?
I don't think so.
Yeah, they didn't add
No.
new characters, but they brought back like older Nest characters. So, so
that gives me.
no, there is
the
one.
Orochi,
That's
the
right.
Orochi team, right? I guess the Orochi team was brought back.
They added them back, yeah. But
Yeah.
Kusanagi is the only true new character. But I mean, that's cheating, isn't it?
Yeah, that doesn't
Yeah, that's
count.
cheating.
Come on.
The boss. Well, that gives me something to ask Mothman.
Kusanagi is
then.
basically 94, 95 kill.
Oh, I see.
I
Mothman,
will
do you
say-
think we need new characters every iteration of a new fighting game? Like, do you think we need it to be 20, 30% of the cast? Or can you do a O2 and just do the good version on the new hardware?
That's a good question. I don't know. I guess you wouldn't need them every time, but people have like kind of come to expect that. I don't know. I don't know if I have a good take on this.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. That's a thinker. Because people do tend to play their fan favorites in the end, right?
Yeah, totally. Maybe everything should just be like an everyone is here plus new characters.
People love it when everyone is here. They love it.
It's easy,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, bringing back, like Kuroshi talked about, like bringing back the Orochi team and even Vice and Mature is like such a cool thing. Haven't seen them since '98, really.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird from the KOF 15 perspective because, like, yeah, all these guys are in the game I play.
Well, 15 is not a dream match, but they found some way to retcon some stuff. Yeah, I think that was it.
I will say that there are console exclusive characters in this game that
Oh yeah.
involves Shingo, King, Geese Howard, Gonitz, and Orochi Iori.
hmm
And it's weird how you have to hunt for them just to get those characters. It was weird for me. It's like, where are these? Where's Shingo? Where's King? I thought these characters were staples.
Yeah, good noting that it doesn't even show this on the SRK wiki.
Okay. So O2, the GOAT. It's a great if you want to get to Pixel KOF on Fightcade. Maybe that's the one you go to.
Yeah.
If you're going to not go to one,
Oh boy.
may I suggest you do not go to KOF 2003. I appreciate you, KOF, but I do not like this one.
Dude, this is one of my least favorite for sure. Like,
It was
okay,
bad.
it is pretty bad. Like,
I am the opposing.
okay, so this was the experiment. Like, this was a new era. This is again the foray into the new era for KOF. It's the last MVS KOF game, Neo Geo MVS KOF game. It's also the first of the Ash Saga KOF games. It introduces a cool new protagonist, Ash. I said protagonist, yes. Yes, a lot of people think on a surface he's an antagonist. He is a protagonist. But it's not really clear that he's a protagonist until 13.
An anti-hero.
Yeah, anti-hero is probably more accurate. Regardless, though, this game introduces tag mechanics. It's terrible. It's literally just tagging, pretty much.
For no reason. There's no
For
white
no reason.
life. There's no meter gain or penalty. You just tag.
Yep,
Yep.
straight up. That's it. They don't really offer anything in this game apart from the new characters, which I will admit Shen is so cool. Like, love that they added him. I like Ashe a lot too, but not in this game. I think Ashe's moveset in this game is a little whack. But Shen is really cool. I never played Duolon, so I don't know about him in this game.
Duolon's really cool, but he's broken in this game.
Oh, okay. Well,
He's like mega broken.
that's funny. Yeah, I think this game also had Gato for the first time
Mhm.
in KOF. Yeah. Yeah.
And Tizok, we were playing Giro over here.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, dude. Like, this game is kind of awful.
It's bad.
I like the style that they went though. Like this new style, like art style specifically, especially in the character select and the cover art. I think it's cool. But
I'll just say that EJK and I never finished a game that didn't go to time over.
yeah, I don't know what they were thinking for this game. Like, literally just tag mechanics and that's it.
Tag.
Yeah.
Tag.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we'll keep it moving. We'll keep it moving. Thank you for existing 2003.
Farewell, Neo
Because
Geo.
it's time.
Wait, before we move on, I do have a slight observation. I noticed that, Robert Garcia goes through a lot of, design changes, whether it be his clothes, his animation. And I can probably say, I do not like Robert Garcia's portrayal in this game. It is weird. It is like, it is unnatural for him to stand like that. Like, in the 2002 game, he has a very natural flow. Like he's like, he has like this really free expression. Here, it's like he's very stiff. He's like, why do you look like that?
Yeah, he does change the most through KOFs, I feel. His moveset and his sort of vibe changes a lot.
I would also like to add that when Ash Crimson came out, people hated him. People were like, who the hell is this character? Why is he look like a she? And why is this a clone of Guile of all characters? And, people were just not liking Ash initially.
He's giving you the middle finger right on the cover of the game there.
Yeah, Ash was a controversial character.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I'm a big fan of Ash, but yeah, definitely a little controversial in release. And funnily enough, two of the things you mentioned kind of tie into each other. Robert's moveset changing around in, I think, 99, 2000 era, he was changed to a Guile style charge character, right? And of course with 03, Ash comes into play, and so after, you start seeing Robert switch back to his more standard move, his Shoto moveset in later games down the line. Not the next game, but yeah.
It's pretty funny. Well, the next game is the hipster choice, KOF 11.
Yeah, I'm gonna get my 2 cents in here because this is one of my least played KOS for sure. First game that's not on Neo Geo as far as KOF games are concerned. The hardware for this was a Thomas Wave, I believe. So it's it's pretty hard to come by this at the arcades. Yeah, I think otherwise, I'll let the others have at this one.
This is another tag game. It's got a very distinct UI design and everything like that.
Yeah, pause it here and you'll look at the UI. Actually, no, go back. Look at the non-capitalized names.
Yeah.
Look at the tiny Look at how the roster is shoved into the bottom third of the screen. Look at the
I'm kind of loving the
non-capitalized
style,
time
though.
counts.
Yeah, the
What
renders
is
are great.
this?
I like the renders a lot, though. Yeah.
Something
Not only
about
this, but
this whole
wait
presentation is
a couple
what's doing
seconds
it.
once we select characters. Watch this. You're not gonna believe this. Pause. What's that font that the time is in? It might not be exactly Comic Sans, but now anyone who watches this, you will be unable to unsee what I've put in your brain.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Well,
It's also
the early
inconsistent.
2000s
The
Comic
font of
Sans
it is
still
completely
has.
inconsistent with everything else on the screen. The text is inconsistent. The capitalization is non-existent. It's so weird.
Sprites look kind of bad too.
Oh, but what I did show off in the gameplay here that you might have seen, Kill in this game has Rekka and Fireball,
Yeah.
which is neat.
Sounds weird, to be honest. Okay, I guess I will mention this. So there's an arcade in Nagoya called Port 24 Yagoto, and they play this game there so much. Like, this is probably the most played arcade game, like straight up KOF 11. In Japan, this has a pretty big cult following. In general, this game is a cult following, I feel like, but it definitely didn't reach the mainstream quite like O2 did, or quite like some earlier KOF games did. I mean, in general, KOF is kind of on the downtrend in terms of popularity, and leaving Neo Geo MVS didn't really help things. Gameplay wise, again, I don't really know specifics because I haven't messed around this game enough, but there's tagging just like O3, but then they also added this like way to tag in during your combo or something. And then there's also like
Yeah,
dream cancel
There-
based on good.
the little circles there give you the ability to basically Z-tag or tack or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You can spend one circle to tag while you're doing moves, and then or you can tag two circles to basically burst. What is interesting about the circles is the first one charges at I think it takes 8 seconds to charge, but then once you have the first one and you haven't spent it, the second one takes 16 seconds to charge, I believe. But if you spend the first one, it goes back to like 8 seconds, which is weird. This game is strange, but yeah, it absolutely has a giant cult following.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I am that cult. No,
Why
like,
is this good?
so let me tell you something. I bought this game at a Toys R Us on the PS2. This was like 10 plus years ago. I also bought this on the Japanese PlayStation store on the PS3. That is on the PS2. This game I grew up with a lot. This game I have, just appreciated a lot. And there are some so there are some tidbits in this game. This game improves the tag mechanics of, from like 2003, where like what EGK says, there is like, a mechanic where you can, like while you're doing a combo on one character, you can switch out to another combo, another character to do an extension combos. And then there's a burst mechanic where you spend the two little bars and you essentially like switch out the other character. This game also introduces new characters like Oswald. This is his first introduction before he comes out later in 14. This is also Elizabeth's first introduction as well. I forgot to mention in KOF 2000, but this is one of two. This is like Duck King's second appearance as a full character, because he was a striker in 2000. Momoko is an interesting case where she's this part of the Psycho Soldier team, and she has this like very unique way of capoeira that has a very cutesy approach. And the funny thing is, this is her only appearance as of this game and in the future. She never appears anywhere else. And then you have B. Jeanette, who is also from I think this is her first appearance. Am I
In KOF, yeah,
correct?
yeah.
Yes.
I think she was
And
in
then
03.
you have Yeah. Oh, she wasn't 03? Okay.
I think she was in 03, yeah.
Oh, was
Okay.
she in 03? Maybe she was, yeah.
Then you have Shion. Shion had a very last minute decision where Shion was initially designed to be female, but then they switched it up and said, all right, this effeminate looking person, male. And this has been like the running joke of this particular game ever since. This game is infamous for, I mean, there are, SNK boss syndromes. This one takes it to the K. You thought Rugo was hard? You thought Chris was hard? You thought Ignis was hard? Gonitz? No. Have you met Magaki? This guy is a zoner's wet dream. Magaki has like ways of pushing you back into the wall, and then he has projectiles which are ghosts that are like semi-invisible that can come from like pretty much anywhere. And to top it all off, he has a full screen super, which will decimate like a quarter of your health. This boss character, I rip my hair off every time I face him because, good lord, I can't. So this game also has console exclusives. This game also utilizes guest characters from, for example, like Gai Tendo and Silver from Baruki 1, Sho Hayate and Yazu from Savage Rain. The guest characters, unfortunately, they're banned from competitive play because, well, they're console exclusive. So they are hidden characters. So if you notice that on the character select screen, there is a secret passage where you can go move from the left, and then you'll have access to the extra to like sub boss characters and boss character. On the bottom row, you have the PlayStation 2 exclusive characters. We have Nest Kyo, Mai Shiranui, Geese Howard, Mr. Big, Robert Garcia, Tung Furu, and Hotaru Futaba. And finally, to top it off, this game introduces a very unique edit system where you can customize your character's sprites to whatever color you want. I remember just editing Kyo's flames from red to blue, or even green, just by copying a palette from another character to this particular character that I want, and it was dope as. Yeah, it was. This game is I'm very biased about this game because this game is great, and I gush too much about it. This is one of my top 3. So
Cult favorites are definitely like when you get a lot of games and you get a company that tries new things. Like cult favorites are something that can emerge and they're a lot of fun. I think Mothman, you kind of know about this because you play Tatsunoko versus Capcom. They made so many first games that there was something about that one that really drew you in.
Yeah, I think it was part of it was the aspect of things just kind of being underexplored, in those types of games with like a lot of different possibilities, but like not that much exploration. I just feel like there was a lot of room. And yeah, it's cool having like a smaller community. Sometimes I feel like can give a certain vibe, like, like who's pushing certain characters or like who to try to play for like certain matchups and stuff like that. So I don't know, the small community kind of like cult classic vibe. It's a little more like personal. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I think 11's definitely a good place for that kind of thing. Or you can be the king of KOF 95. Any last thoughts on 11 here?
Well, one character that was in 03 and 11, Adelheid, I think is kind of cool. I don't know how popular he actually is, but he's Rugal's son. He's on screen. Well, he's on a team there. You can see him. Maybe if you skip ahead a couple seconds, you'll see him. I think he's neat. Another thing about 11 is, while it might not be my personal game, the soundtrack is phenomenal.
Oh,
and
yes.
Because it's on a Thomas Wave hardware and not the classic Neo Geo, the original soundtrack is actually really good. And in my opinion, most of the tracks on the original soundtrack are actually as good, if not better, than the arranged versions, in my opinion. I think the biggest example of this is Queen, which is Elizabeth's theme. In my opinion, the arranged version kind of falls flat, but the original, the arcade version, is like super good. And to a lesser degree, same thing with like New Order.
Okay, so we're gonna talk about 12, but very briefly. EJK, I want you to tell us what's wrong with this game. Why did this happen?
Oh no! Yeah,
We don't have time to spend a lot of time here. So
yeah.
No buy.
Basically, new era. They wanted to have good sprites, and those sprites cost a lot of money because they did 3D models first, and then they drew over the 3D models with sprites, and then they also didn't have time to animate everything. So there's a lot of missing close normals and a lot of missing animations and special moves and everything. Also, the gameplay is weird. If you notice on the screen, the characters are way too big, and it has that weird zoom out that like Art of Fighting has. And then the systems are weird. It has, the CD, you can do like stuff and then cancel into CD and then juggle out of it, which is just weird. And like so much of this game is just weird. Also, not a gameplay thing, but the soundtrack is weird. Like, it's not awful necessarily, but the soundtrack is stage dependent, and there are no real character themes or team themes. So that kind of makes them feel a little lifeless, for lack of a better term. There is one theme, which is the remixed 96 Kyo Osaka, which that one's pretty good, but it's just weird.
It's a gross game. I think if we're telling the story, this almost killed SNK again. And you can't even like buy this thing. You can't even get it or find it to play, and that's fine. Don't bother.
Yeah. So funny story. I started in KOF 13, like 10-ish years ago or so on the Xbox 360, and I bought that on digital because at the time I was watching Street Fighter 4, and then I saw KOF 13, and I was like, this game is really cool. So I looked for it, and it was on Xbox Marketplace, and so I just bought it, and I fell in love with that game. And then I was like, okay, surely there's other games. So I go on Xbox Marketplace again, and I look up King of Fighters, and KOF 12 pops up, and I go, okay. I click on it, and it has a store page, but you can't buy it. You couldn't buy it when Xbox Marketplace was active. Like, at some point, I'm sure you could buy it, but when I tried, it was on the store, but you couldn't buy it because they don't want to acknowledge that this existed.
Protecting it from you. Look at Ash all smug on the worst game they ever made.
I guess also this is a little lore bit. I can talk about lore because this game sucks so bad I don't want to talk about the game. The Ash Saga is an interesting one where basically you have Ash Crimson, and the bosses of these games are called Those from the Past, and they have a whole convoluted plan which is kind of weird, but they kind of want to steal Orochi's power and use it for their own means. And so then they go through Ash to do it, and it's just this whole weird thing. And the point is, Ash is going around stealing the 3 sacred treasures, characters' powers, to be able to unlock Orochi and whatnot. And so he beats Shizuru first, I believe, and that's why Shingo is in KOF 11. The team is Shingo, Iori, and Kyo in that game. And then Iori's Riot of Blood activates, and he basically beats up Shingo like really bad. And so he's out of commission for the next couple games. And then Ash, while Iori's going crazy, steals Iori's flames, and that's why in KOF 12 and 13 he doesn't have flames.
It's funny. Oh yeah, in this game, Iori doesn't have a Fireball or a Rekka.
Yeah, he has a claw moveset. If you've ever seen 13 Claw Iori, that's where that's from.
Okay, so 13, we'll just go ahead and pop right on over there. Let's commence the gushing, everyone. Mothman, you played this a little, right? Trials? I think that's how most people know about this game.
Yeah, I was like around at the time, so like I had a copy, I tried some trials and stuff, but mostly I was just like watching some of the matches around that time. I don't know. It was really sick. Like just seeing all the flashy like long combos, like touch of deaths and stuff, and like how the top players at the time seemed to have like a grip on so many different characters, and they were always like mixing it up. Like even to me, like as someone who hadn't played very much, it was like such a spectacle. So I always thought of this game like very positively. It was like really fun to watch. I think the sprites look amazing. But I know like in later years, it wasn't until later on that I kind of heard that this was like kind of polarizing for some people. I don't know, maybe you guys could clarify that, but like people tend to have strong feelings about this one way or another.
Oh yeah. Yeah, those
Yeah,
strong
we're
feelings are
gonna
about
have,
to be
like,
shared. Yeah.
two sides of a coin type of situation here. Because, like I sort of mentioned earlier, like this was the KOF game that really made me love KOF. It's the game that I first played out of the KOF series, and I absolutely adore this game. It's my favorite version of Kyo to play. It is Fireball Kyo, but he's like really ridiculous in this game. He's only like mid tier, but like I like how he plays in this game. But and the sprite work is phenomenal, the music is phenomenal, the stages are great, and I like playing, training and trial modes. However, there is a flip side to this, and I'll let Kurushi take it from here.
Yeah. So as with EJK, this is my first KOF game. In fact, my second, I guess third fighting game technically, but anyway. 13. When I first played when I was younger, I loved it. I was trying to do the combos. They were very hard for me. I was playing on an Xbox 360 pad at the time. That was before I got an arcade stick, which was like a year later.
Same, dude.
Yeah. The combos were really hard. And anyway. How I feel about this game now differs greatly from how I felt about it over 10 years ago. I think this game is one of my least favorite KOF games, and for a number of reasons.
Oh.
Yeah, especially after 14, I realized how much I dislike this game. One, as EGK already mentioned with 12, a lot of the movesets in this game are so limited, and it's something that carries over. SNK really cut corners in this one. They didn't add a lot of the close and far normal distinctions that really set apart some engagements in neutral and on offense. So a lot of characters, the normals end up being stubby because they had to, coalesce them into one button or one normal for that button. You have Yuri's normals, for example. They're terribly stubby, even though they're really good. We're seeing Psyche on the screen right now. His standing B, I think it is. It's really bad. It's super stubby and almost useless.
Ash and Psyche's standing B is useless.
Yeah, exactly. Like maybe it's like a little plus or whatever. I don't know, but it's pretty bad.
The frame data is strictly worse than Crouch B, and the range is just worse, and they're both cancelable, so
yeah. Why would you ever use it? Exactly. Another thing too, this is so subtle, but this is something that I found a way to explain now for unaware audiences. The screen being a lot more zoomed out than 12, while this is a good thing, it makes you realize actually that the stages are very small. And this combined with the low jump heights that this game has actually makes offense like overwhelmingly strong. And there's a couple of reasons for this. You land one jump CD, let's say from round start distance, and boom, you can chase down your opponent. They're already back facing corner. Like legit. You can run your offense off of like just literally one jump CD, which is not the case in most KOF games. Like most KOF games, you get some breathing room after you eat a jump CD. This game, you eat a jump CD from like round start or so, like basically midway through the stage. You're already going to be back facing corner. And a lot of characters can confirm off of a jump CD, which leads me to my next point. Like not only is offense absurdly strong due to like what I already mentioned with the stage being small and jump heights being short, but offense is strong because of combo potential. Basically what they decided is that they wanted to add something that was a nod to the free cancel system of O2. It's known as the drive cancel system, or like, drive, hyperdrive, whatever is associated with it. It allows you to cancel specials into specials, but only certain ones. It's not as flexible as O2. Some characters, there's a lot of disparity with this one. Some characters are much better suited for drive canceling than others. And that leads to like optimal positioning for in terms of team order for the metagame. But the issue is that because of how much certain characters get off of drive canceling than others, the balance is just super out of whack. A lot of the times, the meaningful interactions you're having per match are very limited, especially once meters available in abundance. This is the case especially with like Mr. Karate, who's a DLC character, EX Yori, who's a DLC character, and Kim, who's not a DLC character. This leads into the next point, the DLCs. I think there was a good video on this from, I can't remember his name right now.
Yeah, the $15.
Yes, that's the video. I can't remember the guy's name. I really do apologize. But there was a video that he made. And I think it really summarizes it greatly. These characters are on the base game. The game was fine before that. Not really. I mean, it was still pretty bad, but at least the balance was okay enough. These characters were added and they just all ruined the balance, to be honest. Like, they were just two out of three were the best characters in the game. The other one was like maybe top 5, EXKyo. EXKyo is Nestkyo, which he's named in such a way. I think EJK will get into that maybe a bit later on, but it's basically just Recounting. He's pretty good. Let me speed through my other points of why I don't like this game. A lot of the music, it's kind of calls back to some of the earlier games and the character themes for them. I think they're just worse versions, honestly, of those earlier games versions. I'm not a big fan of the music in this game. There are some ones that are quite memorable due to having watched Vesper Arcade's KOF 13 Trials mode videos, like way back. And that leads me to my next point. Like, this is a positive point for this game. Because of how combo heavy it ends up being at a high level, the trials are actually super fun to do, and they're fun to go back to because they're really challenging. A lot of them are not very practical, though. At least for tournament settings. They're just a little too, like they're too difficult for no reason when you can just go for easier stuff that gets the job done. So last thing I'll mention about why I don't like this game, I already mentioned the movesets being pretty awful because of SNK cutting corners. This is not just related to stubby normals, but this is also the literal number of moves that characters have access to. King has 3 special moves in this game. She has the Venom Strike, the famous fireball. She has the Trap Shot, which is the capture kick, and then she does a couple kicks on you. And then there's Tornado Kick, the anti-air. Those are her 3 special moves. She's really strong in this game, but her moveset and playing her does not feel fun because there's just not a lot you can really do with her. And part of this was because, again, it was really expensive for SNK to be able to animate everything that was in this game. The sprite work is lovely, but at a cost. And it came at the sacrifice of fun and, deep gameplay with regards to characters' movesets. There's a number of examples of this. There's not enough time to go through all of them. But I do not like going back to this game for like characters' movesets because they just feel like I'm not playing the full character, And it also just didn't translate too well into the KOF 13 system specifically, where you have to be able to confirm well off your normals and make good use of drive canceling. So
I'm shocked to hear.
I mean, yeah, again, like my position has kind of changed over the years. Again, this was my first KOF game, so naturally, like I thought highly of it some time ago. But especially after 14, that's when I started to realize this game is not really all that. That's when I started to understand deeper like what made KOF feel good to play. And it's those isms that they really like have stuck with for a number of games now. And KOF 13 unfortunately departed from a lot of those. I'm not a big fan.
Well, I guess I have to defend it. This was the first KOF I saw at Evo, and it's just amazing looking, and the combos are really cool. I never played it though, but I think part of KOF's popularity comes from this game and just how cool it looked. So I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess gameplay aside, this was the last game of the Ash saga. It concluded all that was related to the story for it. That's when we got to realize that Ash was actually a good guy all along. He got to show his affection for Elizabeth proper as well. Spoiler, sorry, I know. The roster is not.
And then he gets vanished from existence.
Or does he?
Well, we'll see.
15.
Yeah, we'll get there. The roster's okay. I mean, in hindsight, it's not as bad as I once thought. But it's unfortunate that, you know, the 3 DLCs kind of ruin things balance wise. I guess it just kind of disincentivizes me from exploring further like Claw Iori that's in this game, because EX Iori is so much cooler in 13, especially with the drive cancel system. And just on that note, like, it's just some characters are so much cooler than other characters on drive canceling. Like Chin does not function without drive cancels. Huajai is really cool, just regardless. Duo Alone is awesome, but a little bit of work. Regular Kyo, as EGK already mentioned, really strong in this game, but only like is the king of the corner really. In mid screen, he's not as powerful. But considering how easy it is to get to the corner, it's not too bad of a thing. Psyche is awesome. He's an unlockable character, and it's not really hard to unlock him, but he has a much cooler moveset than Ash, in my opinion. Ash in this game is a bit of a meme gameplay wise. He's a charged character in a game where you need to be able to cancel between specials with ease, and as such, well, I don't know. Maybe that's not really related, but Song Colette's is really cool.
The combos actually work okay, but because you just do like you do like charge down, back, down, up, and into forward. But
yeah,
charging in this game in general for like neutral purposes is like a nightmare.
It's whack. It doesn't really work that well, especially with how bad the normals are.
Yeah.
It's if you mess up, you get an awful normal, and then you just get full comboed from a jump in.
I will say you didn't play 12 and 2003 right before you played this game. This game handles like a dream.
Oh, absolutely.
Games.
Oh, definitely. Like considering its inclusion. Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the combo.
Hey.
There's the corner stuff you were talking about.
Yeah, the king of the corner, truly, Mr. Kyoku Sanagi is. EJK, do you think this game aged well? Like, we obviously know, and we know what 14 and 15 are like now. Do you think this game aged well in any aspect? I mean, obviously the visuals look great, but in any aspect?
Who absolutely loves this game, and I still do. I actually do fully pretty much agree with everything you've just said. I like it's a very weird thing because I still really like this game, but I fully agree that it's not really it doesn't have a lot of what makes KOF really special in a lot of ways. And I think my opinion would be a lot more sour on this game if I had to play it for money or just play it against, people in general. But, I just basically just sit there and play, trials and training and stuff. So to me, those specific reasons are not, super big in my head. But, like, obviously, logically, right? Like, that's what a fighting game is about, really. You know what I mean?
Hey, you can if this game is just trials for everyone across America, I think that's fine. It's good. It was good for that.
That being said, yeah, I would agree that also I forget who said this. I think it might have been Sayano. That this game was such a landmark for KOF in general, and it got a lot of fans, and including me. I would not be here or love KOF if it weren't for this game. I think.
Yeah. Yeah, 09 era was a wonderful time for fighting games. A lot of great releases like this came out. I should say
we got a 09er here.
We sure do. I should say this is a big misconception about this game almost bankrupting SNK. No, not quite. It did require some soul searching. That of course is obvious. They didn't make enough money from this game to be able to sustain something like this over time. But almost bankrupting, or even bankrupting them at all, was definitely a gross misconception.
Yeah, I think 12 kind of did that more.
Right, yeah. Okay, yeah.
All right. Any last comments on 13?
It introduced... yeah.
The combo challenges are insane.
Yeah.
The only viable, like, I didn't put a lot of time in this game for, because this game is very, very difficult. to get into. And the only one I could complete was Maxima's combo trial. So that's like the only like if you want an achievement, just do Maxima's combo trial and you'll get it easy. But other than that,
Nice.
yeah, this game is a lot. I felt like this game deviated a lot from prior titles because, and you can tell, and also you can tell that SNK was also having their goodbyes again based on how they presented characters like Athena and Sai Kenzo, because their appearances are based off of their first appearances in their Psycho Soldiers game. So there's that.
Interesting. All right, we're moving on to 14.
You guys move on. I'm going to go to the bathroom for like 1 minute, so
Sure.
You guys get started, though.
I didn't crop this because the graphics on this page are unfinished, which is the theme of 14. But Karushi, I'm sure you have more to say about this one.
14. This was the game where this was the first KOF game that I really tried to get into competitively. This game changed my whole, because I had played other KOF games before playing 14, after I played 13, that is. This game changed my whole perspective on what made a KOF game good. Now, everyone knows, along with myself, how bad this game looks. It looked even worse on launch. If you haven't seen what this game looks like on launch, oh my goodness. In the trailers, it's horrendous. It's shameful. Honestly, there's some context to this that we should establish just right from the get-go. SNK was trying to make a transition into 3D because they wanted to make sure that their development cycle was sustainable for keeping the series high quality. So they're like, okay, let's try to learn 3D. Let's try to work with some actual, let's just try to get experience for this. But for some reason, they had a bright idea to make their own engine for it rather than working with highly respected commercial engine. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, they worked with their own engine for this one. Really, the only thing that went wrong, truthfully, was the textures and the shading. I think everything else is fine. The models are fine, as was shown when they were someone transported an on-helm model into SF5, and it looks great. But it's really just the shading that doesn't make things look good. Lighting is absolutely poor. Makes the characters' faces look lifeless. In fact, a lot of them look similar if you didn't see the name next to them. A notable character, Sylvie, looks quite awful in this game. But yeah, on that note, so let's talk about the positives, because I have a lot of positives on this, which might surprise a lot of people. This game, again, went back to the basics, kept things like free from too many gimmicks. The only real gimmick in this game is max mode, and it's presented in a very different form than previous games. There's raw max, which allows you to spend EX moves, which I forgot to mention during 13, but 13 introduced EX moves into KOF. But yeah, during raw max, you can spend any number of EX moves, which take away time from the max mode time. And then quick max is like you can cancel into it, but it gives you less time to do EX moves. And basically the whole thing about this game is being able to confirm like cohesively using your character's normals and from a lot of engagements. So it could be from crouch lights, from your pressure, it could be from, throwing out a neutral button, your far D or your far standing D, I'm saying, or your jump in normal. Basically, max mode working like this allowed for a lot easier combo opportunities. And yes, easier means more accessible. I think a lot of people are at odds with that. But there's something beyond the surface here that worked really well for this game because the balance was great. And for a game that had, I think, 50 characters or something like that, the balance was a lot better than expected. It took a couple of version updates to get there. And there were some instances of certain characters being broken, or not broken, but really, really strong. Shune was strong throughout the game's lifespan for the most part. K-Dash was crazy on release, as was guest character Nakoruru, added from Samurai Showdown. There's a version where Naj, Hydern, I forgot the other character, but Naj was I think a fan designed character, won like an art contest or something, and SK decided to put her in. That was really cool of them to do because I think Naj is a really cool character, not just gameplay but
Nice.
design wise. Yeah. But yeah, she was really strong on release. They had to kind of nerf her. Hydern was strong for a time. Uh, at the end of the game's lifespan, it was a lot of Alice because she was really easy to play. Yeah, anyway, overall, like the balance is really good though. Like just going back to the bare simplicities really helped things gameplay wise. And I think until 15, I think this was the most polished KOF game in terms of just the raw gameplay.
And it plays a lot like 15.
Oh yeah, this was like the early, yeah, this was definitely the foundation for 15. I would say. I want to point this out. During this time period, a lot of people have again the misconception that again SNK was about to go bankrupt, so that they had budget issues for this game. Well, quite the contrary. The budget was fine. It was more so the perception that they wanted to build. They didn't want to give the impression that KOF was gone for good because people saw the visual and were like, "Oh, KOF's done. It's over," right? They didn't want to give that impression, so they really doubled down in trying to go forth with this 3D look and improve things. So they did have a couple version updates that improved the graphical look, which is what we see currently. Again, it looks much better than it did on launch. But in addition to that, it's worth noting that the sales for this game were much higher than 13 overall.
Oh,
Especially, this game did extremely well in China. And part of the reason for that was China was going crazy over Shunei for whatever reason. The new characters, again, this is like a new era for new saga for the story. The Shunei saga. That's not what it's actually called, but it's like, Shunei's the main character. Of course, you still have Kyo and Iori in the game. But a lot of the new characters didn't end up being tremendous fan favorites apart from Shunei in China. But this game also really took off in Taiwan and Japan, a lot of parts of East Asia. Not so much in the western side of the world, but it still did well enough to bring SNK out of the depths in terms of their financials.
if I can ask the obvious question, Mothman and StormClaymore, a good game that looks ugly, can that survive in 2024?
That's a good question. And it also depends on who's developing it and how much fun is it going to offer. Because when I look at KOF 14, there are some regrets that I wish I could have gotten into it, but because of the way it was presented, like especially with Kyo's new design, I was so turned off by the way it looked. But like jumping years later, when playing this game is really fun. This game is great, and I wish it had a lot more attention, but also the looks are validating. Like, if you want to bring in a new crowd, you have to impress them first with, presentation. And this is also very relevant to the game, such as Hunter x Hunter, where the game obviously looks very slow, but because it's designed by 18, that game has gonna be a lot of really saucy combos and a lot of fun mechanics that people are gonna enjoy. So yeah, you got looks actually unfortunately do matter, because you can also see where Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite fell off, because while the gameplay is pretty good and decent, the presentation was so unbearingly such a turnoff that a lot of people were just like, this is not the game that we thought of that we wanted or thought of in the first place.
Definitely. Mothman, do you have any comment on this?
Well said. I mean, I think he about summed it up. I agree with pretty much all of that. I don't know. You said like to survive, which is interesting. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more it does seem like a necessity, because I think most players and fans are in the camp where looks are basically a deal breaker at this point. For me, I don't know. Like I might play something if it was fun or whatever, and I haven't really minded like some of the games that other people say look bad. But I'm just talking to more and more people and realizing that it's just like such a common opinion that like, oh, I don't like the look of this, or it's too whatever, it's too anime, it's too whatever. Like people will really not play over that. So yeah.
UGK,
Thank you.
looks like you're back now. Do you have any thoughts on 14?
So it's an interesting game. When it first released, I literally couldn't play it because I think it was a PlayStation exclusive. And I also didn't have any of the next-gen consoles or a PC at the time. So I was just left as a spectator only. And as a spectator, I was very, very like critical of it because I was like, it looks bad, obviously. That's the thing everyone knows, especially on release. If you think this looks bad right now, go look at some of the comparisons with release. It looked really bad. That being said, I do agree that gameplay-wise, it's actually like pretty solid. And it definitely set the groundwork for 15. The quick max meta, though, it's a fun mechanic, but sometimes it felt like weird giving certain characters access to like basically be able to convert off of like pokes that you feel like they probably shouldn't, i.e. like Iori Fardi.
Yeah.
Iori Fardi quick max was like such a big part of the meta for, the longest time that I don't know. It's a weird thing in my opinion. But also another part that I really didn't like was when Alice took over the meta. I don't like Alice.
Yeah, I agree.
Alice is such a boring design. And her gameplay is also not particularly interesting. She's like Iori, but like on crack. Why does she have a DP that's hard knockdown into a safe jump? Why does she have a hard knockdown Rekka? What is happening?
14 had some sick characters, though.
14?
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, there's so many cool designs. Like, I genuinely like Mion, Naj.
Yes.
Shune is pretty cool. I wouldn't say he's like my favorite, but he's cool. A lot of the designs are... Sylvia I actually quite like. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion. I think she's kind of funny. Also, she's based off of that, like... what's her name? There's a music video that's famous that she's based off of, but I think she's neat. Oswald's addition and return was such a cool thing, as you can see on screen here. Surprisingly, he was one of the coolest and most stylish characters in like KOF 11, and then he didn't come back. And he actually looks pretty good, and a lot of his animations are super sick, even in 14. And I think like when it was like a Naj Shune meta, I was like more content, but then the second it was an Alice meta, I really was like, oh god.
Yeah.
Side note about Alice also, she literally just steals your money. And by that I don't mean she's not a DLC character. Oh no. Yeah, she's a character originally from Fatal Fury pachinko slot machines.
As is Mui Mui and Love Heart. Is that right?
Like it's really bizarre. And also, not only is she character design a boring character, but her like animations are also kind of boring because in one way I can kind of think this is cool, but on the other hand I think it's boring. All of her animations are stolen from Fatal Fury characters because she's supposed to be a fangirl. Her Rekka is all three of the main Fatal Fury characters' projectiles. Her DP is Joe's Tiger Kick plus Crack Shoot.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move us along from hating this one character.
Fair enough.
Does anyone have anything else they want to say about 14?
Lobbies were good. I think people don't realize that.
Lobbies.
They took away the lobbies in 15. What happened?
They made it worse, straight up. I like the OST a lot in this game.
Sick.
Yeah. OST is great in 14.
Also, this was the one that introduced matchup to music, which is such a cool thing. So great.
Mm-hmm. Neat. Okay, so I mean, 14 is cool, but I mean, there's really not a lot that has to be said here. I'll just say my piece. Yeah, this is the one. It's peak. KOF 15, we made it.
Facts.
I'll let you guys go off.
Oh my goodness. Everything culminated perfectly. We all those remember all those months of hype? I don't know. I mean, like I was definitely like just fanboying all over it.
Well, if we're talking about hype, I have to interject one thing here.
Okay.
After the release of KOF 14, there was a little game called SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy. It's a bit of a meme game, and it's not a very good game, and it's a funny game, and it's also a very, let's just say, fan servicey game. But it was a genuine part of KOF 15's hype. At the end of KOF 14, the boss Verse is defeated, and Verse basically, like, I don't know how to put it, but like he's like connected to some spirit world thing, and when he was defeated, souls got released everywhere of dead people. And so in the end of one of the teams ending, you see like Ash is resurrected, for example, and then you see the Sacred Treasures people sealing Orochi again because he came back. And then SNK Heroines drops, and Shermie is in the game. And not only is Shermie in the game, in her ending, it shows Yashiro and Chris alive. And this brought into question, is SNK Heroines canon?
That's why it's not a dream match. That's what you're saying.
And so everyone thought this was very pivotal in the hype train because people were like, wait, does this mean Shermie, Chris, and Yashiro are back? Or are they just saying, or is this just a meme game? To my knowledge, SNK Heroines is in fact considered canon now, looking back, but at the time, it could go either way.
Interesting little tidbit there. So that explains why this is not a dream match. So what do you guys think of 15?
Yeah. 15 was, and 15 is, and 15 will continue to be the best KOF game in the series. I don't think that's a hot take. I think this is the KOF game. If you're looking to get into KOF, provides the most polished gameplay experience, has decent enough visuals. I actually don't know if the visuals are the best it could have been, but for what it's worth, I think it was presentable. Given
I have no complaints on that.
Yeah, and I'm not really someone that like cares too much about visuals necessarily, but I know that it's important for bringing the game to a wider audience. So I just will mention that the roster. I don't know. I mean, the roster's fine, but given that we have fan favorites like Elizabeth back in the game, the whole Orochi team, like Orochi, Chris, Yashiro, Shermie, they're all back along with their Orochi versions. No one asked for it, but we got the Sam Show team, I guess. Or Haramaru. Haramaru is cool, I guess. I don't know. Kukri's back from 14. Sylvie's back from 14. Anyway, this roster is not like bad, but given what it could have been, this was the season pass format KOF. I'm a little disappointed where it is right now, but knowing that SNK is working on a lot of other things currently, I can't complain really. That
he wants the O2, no new characters, just the classics.
I will say the new characters are kind of cool. Like Dolores.
There are a couple.
Yeah, Dolores is cool. Cronin is technically new. Don't hit me with the K49.
No,
Cronin is technically new. Well, I
he is canonically K49.
Yeah, that character is funny because he ruined competitive play for a bit.
Mothman, you want to come in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, do.
So this was the first one that I really tried for real to learn for an extended period of time, and then I stuck with it for a while. Yeah, I think like early on, I was pretty much drawn to like the huge roster was like a big surprise, because it felt like a versus game. But I was like, wow, I can pick 3 of these, and like there's 50 or whatever plus DLC. Yeah, but it reminds me of like one thing that I've heard that I kind of want to pose back to you guys about this game is that people say that the way that the mechanics work, etc., it's kind of like the last honest modern game or something. I might be saying those words too harshly, but basically there's no obvious comeback mechanic or real like scummy gameplay that will just entirely steal the match, etc. Do you guys feel like there's some truth to that?
Well, I will say it is a pure game in terms of like the better player winning almost every time. And part of that is that it's building its foundation off of, again, 14 and previous KOF games, all the learnings that SNK got from there. Whereas a lot of modern games are trying to like do something new that'll attract like the casual audience, right? This game did that partially, but given that, yeah, as you said, there's not an overt combat mechanic, and there's even chip death still in the game, like that's retained from previous entries. This gave me the sentiment from the first time I played it that yeah, this is the modern fighting game, like the best. I can concur.
Yeah, I have to agree too. That's kind of what drew me to it early on as well, was like um just like the resources and everything. It was pretty like straightforward, but it all flowed together in a really satisfying way. It's like, okay, level 1 into level 2 or whatever. But just like to actually like execute it and have like the impact, like everything felt snappy and good, like footsies were good. I don't know, just like you said, it was very like clean or pure. I think that was one of the main draws too.
Mm-hmm. Did it give you like some curiosity for like how they got here? Like, because 15 was your first KOF. Did that make you interested in anything beyond 15 as far as the KOF series was concerned?
Yeah, definitely, because I entered a lot of tournaments for this, and like one thing that I always noticed like stood apart was that a lot of the people that I would play against had a lot of like legacy knowledge and experience, and I was like, okay, wow, like that's what I'm missing, just like those years and like all that knowledge. So that definitely made me want to check out previous stuff, and this has been enlightening. You guys are so knowledgeable.
No,
I'm
yeah,
impressed you guys know all this stuff.
yeah. No, I mean it's awesome to see that like KO 15 did its job in terms of bringing new people in, because man, it really had to. Sam Show happened, 2019 Sam Show. 14
Oof.
happened, KO 14 happened. So this really had to do a lot, and it sure did. Except for matchmaking, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oops.
The one thing I will say that I don't like about it from like a competitive aspect is, why did they introduce Advanced Strike? The
Yeah.
game was so great, and then I don't like that mechanic. I could talk for days about that mechanic, but I won't do it here. But they shouldn't have introduced it.
It feels like a band-aid mechanic to the fact that people complained about wake up throw, because for those of you that don't know, ever since 14, you can, well, okay, never mind, let me not go there. In 15, basically you have to play around wake up throw, because wake up throw will beat your meaty if you're knocked down. So instead of addressing that and making it like it was in previous KOF games, they decided to add something that's like, hey, look, this beats wake up throw, and if they block, then you're plus. But it just feels like such a hard call out with very minimal reward that you're spending meter for just to deal with wake up throw. Like,
Why is it plus? Why does it refund your bar?
yeah, it's not really. I don't think it served the purpose that they wanted it to. That's
I
basically
am
where I
someone
stand
who
with that.
didn't like the wake up throw change, but even I am like, what is this fix? This is a trash fix.
Agreed.
I don't mind wake up throw, so I didn't like it when it came out, but it's like I think it's fine now, but Advanced Strike is just why.
Yeah. Yeah, I will.
And then kind of to your point of like the DLC being a little bit maybe disappointing,
Mhm.
Hinako being seemingly the last DLC, along with Advanced Strike being introduced as a mechanic, made me go, "Oh, this. Are they going to end this way? Are they going to end disappointing me like that bad?"
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's a commonly held sentiment, but I was just like, I was disappointed at the end. But
One thing I should point out, that this was a big and like a really important change they did from 14. Again, 14 being the foundation for this game. So in 14, quick max was 1 bar to go into it, which is pretty crazy. In this game, quick max is 2 bars. That just changed the game completely, changes things completely. something that goes over a lot of people's heads. But again, it's hard to explain like the context behind that because 14 is not something everyone played. Additionally, the fact that you can do supers into level 3 while still having max mode like not immediately turning off or forcing you to do level 2s like it did in 14. Because if you did a super, like a level 1 super, for example, while you're in max mode in 14, it would force you to do the level 2 version, which would end your max mode. It was a little weird. But in this
Spend an
game,
extra bar.
yeah, it would like force you to spend an extra bar that you couldn't avoid. But this game, you can do level 1, level 2, level 3, potentially, which is really cool. Like that's just gonna seem sick for everybody that plays it. Yeah. Overall, I mean,
Yeah, and I think you guys said it best. Like 15 is the best. It is the best. And
Mhm.
like even the minor complaint that I was talking about that I had with 14 being like the quick max meta, this game has quick max, but I think it's great because just as you said, it costs 2 bars. You can't just like always do it, right? It's an investment. When it was 1 bar, I kind of felt it was like I don't think it's a bad mechanic strictly, but I felt it was a little bit weird on like Iori because how ridiculous Iori became at like mid-range. But in this game, you have to spend 2 bars. So like I think they addressed that complaint and that sort of like feeling like perfectly with this system.
agreed.
Maybe I could take a moment here and read a couple comments from our podcast listeners.
Yeah, dude, please.
Cal Poly Slows Mocha says he started off with KOF 15. He was new to KOF in general. He found the franchise fun and decided to explore more of the games, and he's glad that 15 helped him get into it. And he currently is a long main because he's repping Vietnam. And I'll read one more from Tap here. Tap started with 13, and he says it's no longer his favorite in the franchise. So I guess you're all Karushi pilled. He said still special to him, though. It started his SNK obsession that persists to this day. And then 15 was the actual first fighting game that he sat down to properly learn. He spent time in the wikis, lighting pressure and resets. And the characters and the kits he finds very exciting. He always comes back to these games. It's made him hard to stick to a dedicated main because everyone's so cool in 15. I agree. It's hard to settle on one team. And then he's excited what SNK has next for us. And I've got one more from Omiomai. I'll go ahead and just read it now. Omiomai from CPP and a Las Vegas fighter says, I feel like I made a mistake not getting into KOF earlier. My only experience with SNK for longest was CVS2, which is tight, but he was always a fan and tended to, even though he played the Capcom roster, in the COVID era, he delved into it and he found that KOF 2002 was on Fightcade. He fiddled around, but he had a good time getting beat up by Brazilians and Mexicans online. Once 02 rollback dropped, he sunk his teeth in. He became a real fan. He fell in love with the characters, the music, series history, and of course the gameplay. He says KOF feels so fluid and rewarding in a way that was never too obtuse. He loves the movement and neutral of the game, especially very free yet tightly designed. He began to learn more and more about the characters, their lore and progression, and began finding his favorites. That's mine. Meanwhile, the marketing for 15 started to roll out, so he got into the hype cycle along with Yu Karuchi, and he enjoyed some of the other classic games like 98. When 15 came out, it didn't disappoint. It's his favorite KOF game because it hits all the notes that a modern fighting game and a modern KOF should. It has its shortcomings, like the matchmaking, but as far as the actual game, it's one of the best modern fighting games, no question. This is where the bonds with his favorite character were really strengthened. Leona, Mai, Robert, all such cool and fun to play characters. And he says KOF designs are banger after banger, and honestly, are probably my favorite in any fighting game, period. Happy 30th, KOF. Thanks, Omiomai.
Yeah.
15 is such a good game.
I know, right?
I was playing 2002, and I get a DM from Omiomai. He was like, yo, is that 02 in Steam? I'm like, yeah. He's like, it's sick. I'm going to buy it right now. I'm like, go for it, dog. You're missing out.
Yeah.
Nice.
What a wonderful comment. Thanks to everyone that wrote something.
I don't think we're going to top 15.
Do we want to talk about O2UM? I think we forgot, but I'm not sure if we have time.
You're the time guy, so you let us know. But I'm in the glow of 15, so I'm
game.
good with anything.
Yeah, sure. I've got like 5 minutes basically. So
Can I say something about my experience with 15?
please do. Yes.
Shoot.
I mean, for one thing, like I felt like comparing like the movement speed from like the older games to 15 was just like a very minor thing I didn't, vibe with, because I felt like if you're doing hyper jumps, it should be like a very, very quick decision. But aside from that, this was the game that I really wanted to also sink my teeth in, because there were so many characters that I wanted to play. And as for me, I like to have things with a theme. And the theme that I like to play is two dads and a son, which is Terry, Rock Howard, and Geese Howard. And especially knowing that Geese Howard shared very like 1-to-1 similarities from not just 14 but also Tekken 7, I really wanted to play Geese Howard in this game. And with the CBBL, I really enjoyed going head to head with like other players, and the satisfaction of like hitting like you're like playing the neutral and setting up the combo structures. Like the thing I like about KOF is that it's always consistent on how you should approach like combos and special moves. Like like half the characters have a quarter circle forward, half the characters have a quarter circle back, or they all share something, and that's what makes it so fun about playing any character you want in KOF 15. And yeah, I can also agree with everyone here saying that KOF 15 is by far the modern fighting game of its entire KOFs, and it's a really great game to get into. And yeah, this game is great.
100%.
For sure.
Yeah, it's great to see how much like SNK has matured over the years. Like, and it's all culminated into this game. The move sets are complete. The normals function. Neutral's excellent. It feels great to engage with people at a high level, especially. It's a great game to watch. I mean, we've had some wonderful Evos and such. But anyway, we can go on and on. I think this is one of the best they've put out.
Yeah, now SNK is a company that's like, everyone's excited for City of the Wolves, right? Like, we know they're solid now that KOF 15 landed.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I do want to backtrack a little bit for the few moments of time that I have left here. Let's talk a little bit about O2M, because this one is a bit noteworthy. I got a rollback update during COVID time period, which kind of put it back on the roadmap. But before that, I think it was released in 2010? Is that so? Or 2009?
Yeah, it was that era.
Yeah.
It was definitely that era.
Yeah, so basically they wanted to do a remake a la 98 UM, but in a much more complete fashion, and so they did. My goodness. This is the biggest roster of any KOF game, if I can recall correctly.
I think they especially wanted to do it because like 98 was already a like pretty polished, complete game. But O2, while it's a great game in its own right, because of the whole SNK situation at the time, it lacked a lot of that like clean polish.
Yeah. There's some weirdness with like the way the stages are high res, but the character sprites are still like the old school style. It's a little jarring, but my goodness, the roster. I mean, they've got everyone pretty much up to that point. At least everyone up to O2, I believe, is in the game.
Sports team.
Yeah, except for the sports team, but
everyone else though.
Yeah, basically everyone else. And again, it's got the pure gameplay that original O2 had. Including max mode. Max mode was slightly rebalanced along with every character's movesets and tools. They were rebalanced in this version. And I think for the better. I think O2UM is a much more polished gameplay experience. That being said, it's a little bit of a weird one because the story, again, is non-existent, right? And a lot of people will look at like the title update and be like, oh, why would I play this when I already have O2, right? So it turns out this game is not really as popular in Latin America as O2 is, O2 Vanilla. But in Japan, this game really took off. Not so much in really any other region though. Like the only reason this game really got renewed love was from the rollback update. Apart from that, it wasn't really as popular as it could have been. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, that's a nice bit of obscure KOF trivia to land on, I think.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot to mention one thing. So when Cronin came out, and it turns out that he was actually K49, Kaiser Wave, who is a SNK community head, he revealed something that was very, I guess, shocking. And he said this: what if I were to tell you that the entire K49 theory that the reason why he didn't come back was replaced by Nameless because he was like a reference to Akira? That was all a lie. 20 years they had to hold that until KOF 15 came out, and then he said, "Yeah, all that copyright stuff, no, that was a lie."
Is that so?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He did, I remember that. He did say that, yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
It's crazy.
They even like
After 20
K49
years.
is like blacked out in some of the like art books too. Like, but the whole, but yeah, apparently the whole copyright scenario is fabricated.
Interesting.
Funny.
Also, here I will put my KOF tier list in the. You can look at it, and that's
Critique it. Maybe we can use that as the opener for part 2 or something. Because we do have a couple more things potentially if we want to revisit these. Yeah, the soundtrack in this game was good, but I think it's a little bit polarizing. It's a little bit it's kind of butt rock for a lot of characters' themes or teams' themes. In fact, a lot of the teams have themes that don't really fit them otherwise, but the music itself is pretty cool.
What is Yori's theme in this game?
Yeah. Like it's a cool theme.
No jazz? Are you kidding me?
It's awkward, but I think the music itself is cool.
Yeah, I fully agree. The music overall is very good, but you totally are right. Like it doesn't fit sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready to close off? I gotta go like in a minute, basically. So.
I have one last comment from DB Blizzard. He says everyone should watch the duet from the voice actors from Yori and
True.
Yes.
So hop over there and watch that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, if we're ready to close off, well, thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the episode discussion. We might have some more to talk about, to revisit on, but we did somehow manage to go through every single one of the mainline KOF games. Perhaps in a part 2, we'll cover everything that we didn't manage to discuss, but we had planned for. Nonetheless, we appreciate your tuning in for this episode. Any final comments from our wonderful guests that have joined us today?
If you don't already, play KOF 15. It's really good.
Mothman.
Yeah, thanks so
EGP?
much for having me on. Much appreciated.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks for coming, Mothman.
StormClaymore.
Oh, it was a privilege to be on here again. I love KOF. I grew up with KOF. Like if Tekken wasn't a thing, I'd play KOF. Like it's such a great game. So many great titles, and I will never shut up about it in the fighting game circle because KOF is like is by part of my identity, and to share it all with you here was a privilege. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
Thanks,
awesome.
StormClaymore.
Love to hear that. Sayano, anything last for you?
SNK is dope.
Yeah, excellent. Can't disagree.
Happy 30th, KOF.
Happy 30th!
Happy 30th.
Happy birthday.
Indeed.
It's been an honor being here and being able to chat with you all.
Thanks, EJK.
Likewise. Thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. That's going to do it, guys. This has been episode 24 of Ursine Combo Lab Audio. We're all done for this part, but perhaps there'll be a future part. Who knows? Stick around. Make sure you're subscribed if you're not already. This has been Cruci Drive, Cyano, EGP. StormClaymore, Mothman, and EJK. Thanks for watching.